Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this August 15th, 2023 meeting of the West Melbourne City Council meeting to order. If you'd stand for the pledge and a moment of silence, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. You may be seated. All right. Can we have City Council roll call, please?
Mayor Rose.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Frampus.
Here.
Councilmember Bentley.
Here.
Councilmember Young.
Here.
Councilmember Ditmore.
Here.
Councilmember McDowell.
Here.
Councilmember Adams.
Here.
Great. It's good to have everyone here tonight. And I'd like to welcome everyone to the West Melbourne City Council meeting on this 15th day of August 2023. Members of the public are welcome to speak on any topic, whether it's on tonight's agenda or any issue of importance to you. Each speaker who wishes to speak should complete a speaker card. They're located by the front door and submitted ahead of time to the city clerk. After you've been recognized to speak, please use the microphone at the podium and clearly state your name and address for the record. Please address all your comments to the City Council body rather than individual members, and direct all your questions through this chair. Speakers will be given up to 3 minutes to speak on most items. All right. We have kind of a full meeting tonight, so our first item on the agenda is a proclamation. It's a proclamation about National Suicide Prevention Month. And let me go up here and I'll have Diana, Misha, and Lisa Hickman join me up here. You know, some proclamations are fun. This one is about National Suicide Prevention, and it's not fun, but we need for the awareness. And this was, they work for the Space Coast Health Foundation, correct? And as a former school teacher, unfortunately, we have a number of too many kids that commit suicide. I know we have quite a few in the city and locally, nationally, and whatever. So I want to present you with this to help awareness of this. I'll let y'all hold that. Okay. Whereas September is designated as National Suicide Prevention Month, as recognized by the National Association of Mental Illness. And whereas many health officials and community leaders locally, state, and nationally understand that mental illness is a significant issue of concern, particularly among our youth. And whereas we realize that to address mental health issues requires more open and honest discussions about mental health. And whereas one major hurdle is removing the stigma attached to mental health treatment and discussion. And whereas individuals, businesses, organizations, public officials, and many others recognize the importance of emotional health. Now therefore, resolved that I, Mayor, and the City of the Council of the City of West Melbourne support efforts of the Space Coast to provide education and resources for mental health problems by proclaiming the month of September as National Suicide Prevention Month, and call upon all citizens to encourage those with mental health issues to seek the help of a family member, friend, and colleague, and or licensed mental health professional to assist them in times of need. Witness my hand the seal of the city on the 15th day of August, Hal J. Rose, Mayor. Congratulations.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you.
Good evening. My name is Lisa Hickman, and I am with the Space Coast Health Foundation. I am the executive assistant to the president, CEO, Janet Ginling. I'm sorry she was unable to be here with us today, but I do just have a couple stats for you that I think you might find interesting. In 2021, there were 13.8 deaths per 100,000 people in the state of Florida. In the county of Brevard, our county, 19.4 per 100,000. So that is almost 20 people per 100,000. And in 2021, there was approximately 617,000 people in Brevard. So that's over, quick math, over 120 deaths due to suicide. In 2022, the CDC just released these numbers. Unfortunately, the state went up by one person. So now we're at 15 people per 100,000 in the state of Florida. We do not have the numbers for Brevard County at this time. Hopefully by the end of the year, CDC will release those. But we certainly appreciate you taking the time to do the proclamation, especially for the people that are suffering with mental health and suicidal thoughts. We appreciate it greatly. Thank you for your time.
What do you think we can do? Just the word mental illness, just kind of just a negative thing, right? When you
It
say
is.
that.
I'm so glad you're asking this question. On Monday, there's going to be a press conference at the Space Coast Health Foundation. We are the Center for Collaboration, is what most people know us by. And we will have Senator Mayfield and Representative Tyler Soroy, along with some of the Space Coast Health Foundation board members. And they are going to be talking about some mental health initiatives. And hopefully in the fall, we'll be rolling out some really great programs for the citizens of Brevard County. And I hope that the city of West Melbourne will be able to take advantage of that and share with the citizens of West Melbourne. And we also will be working with Rock, Paper, Simple to help get the word out. So we're all working together.
Education and so it's not a stigma when you
That's correct.
people have issues.
That's correct. So that's right. And we want to correct it before it gets to the point that they're a stat.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Diana Mishra. I was a summer intern at the Space Coast Health Foundation, working with Lisa and the amazing team at the foundation this summer. As someone who's been born and fully brought up here in West Melbourne, I was really shocked to learn about especially the number of youth suicides that take place in our county and in our city. And as a recent high school graduate myself, that was something very shocking to me, and knowing that people my age are suffering and that the stigma around this is such a big issue. So thank you again, Mayor Rose, for helping to recognize this important issue.
Thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
All right, next up, City Manager Tim Rohde will introduce the new Recreation Director.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and prestigious members of the West Melbourne City Council. It is with absolute great pleasure that I introduce Erin Murphy, our new Rec Director. Erin comes with a wealth of experience, 15 years practicing her craft, and is ready to bring her knowledge, skills, and abilities to the beautiful city of West Melbourne. My favorite quote of all the interviews that I have been in the last year goes to Erin. She said, "I do fun. I get to do fun in the rec department." I can assure you she is the only department head during the interview process who said, "I get to do fun." So finance director did not get to say that during her interview. So it is my great pleasure to introduce Erin Murphy.
thank you. I am really excited to be here. This department is awesome and thriving right now. I'm really excited for everything we get to do now with recreation and bring some great activities. I have been part of summer camp. I ran spring training for the Tampa Bay Rays for 3 seasons, most which was during COVID, so don't get too excited. And I've been a part of just great recreation programs, and I'm excited to see what the city of West Melbourne I can bring here.
Great. Well, Mr. McDowell, do you want to?
I do have a question for you. Will you help us get to that mayor walk or the mayor exercise to get to the trophy this year? Will you help us get there? Can we get that commitment?
Learn not to fully commit to anything.
Good hire. Good hire.
I will definitely try.
We'll walk together and just for exercise of it. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
And next is Public Works Director Mark Piccirillo will introduce his new employees.
Good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
Council members. I'd like to introduce you to the newest members of the Public Works team. This is Frank Byers. Frank's been with us for about 3 weeks now and been hired in our fleet division as a mechanic. Born and raised in Florida, and the majority of it since '67, right here in West Melbourne. So happy to have him aboard. On this side is Nicholas Dasher. Nicholas has been hired on our utility side as our water distribution worker, and Nicholas has been with us for about 2 weeks now, and he hails from Georgia, who just moved here not too long ago. So with that, I'll turn it over to
Welcome. Frank, tell us about yourself.
I was born in Key West and raised here in West Melbourne. Watched it grow from a little cow town to what it is now. Happy to be here to try and help keep it that way.
All right. So back then it was we were all about horses, and now we got a.
You're west south of us.
Now besides the gasoline cars, we're talking about electric cars. So you got your hands full.
Yeah, that will be a handful.
Welcome aboard.
Welcome. Here to try and keep them going.
Well, I'm Nicholas Dasher, and
You got to speak into that a little more.
I'm Nicholas Dasher, and I'm new to the area. Just moved here in January. I'm happy to come work with the City of West Melbourne Water Department, and I'm learning a lot so far, and I look forward to learning more.
Right. We got a lot of exciting things happening in the water department in the future, so you're coming on the right time. Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
All right. That concludes the presentations for today. Now we have the public hearings, a number of these. Our first item is our second reading of property located on 591 Ponderosa Street. And I'm sure they'll combine that with some other ones coming up as well.
You have them loaded.
Yeah.
It should be in there.
I have to look for them. Okay. No?
Go ahead. Here. Do you need me to do it?
1 minute, please.
All right.
Back.
Yeah,
There.
I'm just used to, you've spoiled me, so I was used to you having everything ready. Okay, for the record, my name is Christy Fisher. I'm the city's planning director. And even though agenda items 5A and 5B you heard at the last city council meeting, this is a second reading. So just for consistency, I'm going to go through some of the basics. This is a property that is addressed at 591 Ponderosa Street. So that's near Sheridan. So the aerial map shows you the location on the south side of Sheridan. And then on the the right side of the screen, you see a little oval circle in yellow, and that's the approximate location relative to the city limits. The property owner, I'm not sure if the gentleman is here, but he owns these two properties, because it is two properties. And we did send annexation notices to surrounding property owners in the neighborhood. We didn't receive any phone calls, emails, or visits from adjacent property owners. Part of that property is used as single family. It has a house. The other part is vacant. And what they'd like to do is change the house so that it's on a water system, and they currently are on septic. The city water lines exist on the west side of Ponderosa, so the blue lines that are shown on this aerial are the city's water lines. The green lines are the sewer, so you see no sewer in that area. The owner split the parcel, and so that's why I say there's two lots. It's Lot 1 and Lot 2 of the Pine Garden subdivision. Sewer, like I said, is not adjacent, and they are across the street from our city limits. That provides the adjacency that they need according to Florida statutes and according to our codes. Usually annexation has to be for something that's an urban service, so to go from an incorporated county to the city. And in this case, as we said, it's the water. And the other features such as stormwater, that property that has a house on it already exists. The new property that will have a new house will have to conform with today's standards for stormwater. Fire will continue to be served by Brevard County unless that changes. Law enforcement will be West Melbourne. And as with all annexations, we do review the request with our city attorney to make sure it conforms with Florida statutes. I had been asked by you all at the last city council meeting where other properties were on the street that had city water. So all the houses with the yellow numbers are the ones that have city water. You'll see that there's sort of a blank area here that does not have city water. The issue with this is that these properties are not right next to our city limits. So we can do a pre-annexation agreement for if that ever happens. And then, like I explained to you, some of these things we monitor, it probably every couple of years. We don't do it every year, but we would look to see, what is adjacent and what we need to bring into the city. So with that, the staff recommendation based on the last meeting was to approve the second reading of ordinance number 2023-15, annexing the properties located at 591 Ponderosa Street. And if the city attorney could read the title, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2023-15, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, annexing by voluntary petition parcels of land approximately 0.60 acres located at 591 Ponderosa Street and is more fully described herein. Finding that the area being annexed is reasonably compact and contiguous to the city, that the annexation of the property does not create an enclave, and that the annexation of the property otherwise complies with Florida law. Amending the corporate boundaries of the city to provide for the incorporation of real property described herein, providing for the filing of the revised city boundaries with the Department of State, providing for repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, providing for severability, and providing an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to address City Council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd make a motion we approve the second reading of ordinance number 2023-15, annexing the properties at 591 Ponderosa Street.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Ms. Adams, anything? Okay. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries without opposition. Our second item is annexation of property on the west side of Griffin Lane.
This is also an item that's continuing from the last city council meeting. And as we said with the first reading, this property is near Falcon Ridge, which is off of Milwaukee, and a side street called Griffin Lane. So again, the area in color is the city limits. That's the Falcon Ridge subdivision that's next to I-95, but on the east side of I-95. That little red square in the corner is a proposed annexation. Hold on, please. The city owns that lift station, and just like we did with the previous annexation, we sent out notices to surrounding property owners, and we also did not hear back from any of the surrounding folks. And just like we did on the last annexation, we showed a map here that has the green lines, which indicates sewer and indicates the flow to that red square, and then those red lines are the larger sewer line. So this lift station was constructed in 2001. In 2005, Falcon Ridge developed. In 2009, again, because of a pre-annexation agreement, we annexed in the Falcon Ridge. At that time, we believed that that lift station was part of it. We found out, I told you all last time through our geographic information system mapper, that it wasn't, and we're bringing a few of these back to you all in the next few months. It is a government service, and because it's next to Falcon Ridge, it's a logical extension of our adjacent city limits. Just like with any property, it will have, service for law enforcement and fire if needed. We are going to listen to a comprehensive plan and rezoning, which will be institutional, but we'll get to that with that agenda item. So in closing, staff recommendation, just like the previous meeting, is to approve the second reading of ordinance 2023-16. And if the city attorney could read the title of that ordinance, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2023-16, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, annexing by voluntary petition parcels of land approximately .06 acres located on the west side of Griffith Lane as more fully described herein, finding that the area being annexed is reasonably compact and contiguous to the city, that the annexation of the property does not create an enclave, and that the annexation of the property otherwise complies with Florida law, amending the corporate boundaries of the city to provide for the incorporation of real property described herein, providing for filing of the revised city boundaries with the Department of State, providing for repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date. Thank you.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Does anyone want to address City Council on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion to approve the second reading of ordinance 2023-16, annexing the city-owned lift station and property on the west side of Griffith Lane.
Mr. Frampus?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried 7-0. Next, item C, small-scale amendment for properties located on 591 Ponderosa Street.
If you all will allow me to do the presentation of both agenda items 5C and 5D, but remember, for each of those ordinances, you have to make a separate motion whether to approve or not. So again, it's the same property that was just annexed in on Ponderosa off of Sheridan, and if the city attorney wants to address a quasi-judicial.
Thank you. This is a quasi-judicial hearing. That means from the outset that you must disclose any communications that you've had outside of speaking or communicating with staff or within this public hearing itself, including the materials that are provided to you. If you have any other communication with any individuals or, that would include phone calls, text messages, et cetera, please disclose them now.
Any disclosures? Okay. I think we're good there.
Thank you.
Okay, we've gone over the background. The only thing really different here is when we get to the part that says existing use and existing FLU, which stands for future land use. So in the county, it had a designation of residential 6. That's their future land use designation. In the city, we don't have the same numbers and letters in terms of future land use, so ours would be low-density residential. And the same thing with the zoning. There is no RU-1-11 as there is in the county. The closest thing in the city is the R1A zoning district. So what we show with this slide is that with the future land use, we on the left-hand side just indicate that the subject property in the county is sort of in that white box, and then on the right-hand side of the screen, that would have the low-density residential once you all, go through your determination about the future land use. These are a few property photographs. One shows the house, the other one shows a vacant part of the property. As part of our analysis for future land use, we look at surrounding uses, and you can see in all directions you have single-family residential. So it makes sense that there could be another single-family house. We're not, trying to designate it with something that's unique to that area and is not consistent with that area. We do a comprehensive plan review, and those items in red for the water and sewer, we've talked about them wanting to connect to West Melbourne Water. One of the determinations is that there's sufficient capacity available. And sewer, they're not connecting to sewer, they're connecting to septic, so there is no determination about facility capacity. Maximum impacts, again, this is something that we may do a little bit more when we have a commercial, industrial, or other types of use, but we just wanted to show to you that there are 6-inch water lines in that neighborhood, so there's plenty of volume capacity for that particular lot. We have to make sure that the goals, objectives, and policies are being abided by, and so this does fit in with some of the description of low-density residential, so we show that in the staff report. And then, as you all remember, there is a new element in the comprehensive plan called the property rights analysis. And, the property owner does have the right to improve the property with whatever it's designated with. And it also states that development has to be compliant with state and local ordinances. So moving on to agenda item 5D, again, we've talked about in the county, they have that acronym of R-U-11. In the city, the closest approximation to that is the R-1A, which is also consistent with the zoning that surrounds that area. And so this chart, tells you there's still some stuff in the county, but for the stuff that's in the city, you do have the R1A, and it is a very low density. They're only proposing to have those two houses on, 0.6 acres, so it's less than the 5 dwelling units an acre. So this is an item that last week went to our Planning and Zoning Board, and they're the local planning agency. They did recommend approval to you all for this future land use amendment, and then they did recommend rezoning the property. So with agenda item 5C, if you all would consider approving the first reading of ordinance number 2023-17, and then with agenda item 5D as in dog, if you would consider approving the first reading of ordinance number 2023-18. And if I could have the city attorney read both those titles, please.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2023-17, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to change the future land use of land located at 591 Ponderosa Avenue as more fully described herein from Brevard County Residential 6 to City of West Melbourne Low Density Residential, providing an effective date. And ordinance number 2023-18, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, rezoning parcels of land totaling 0.60 acres located at 591 Ponderosa Street from Brevard County RU111 to City of West Melbourne single-family residential, providing an effective date.
Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Does anyone from the audience wish to speak on either of these two topics? Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Deputy Mayor Frampus.
Thank you, Mayor. I make a motion we approve the first reading of ordinance 2023-17 as written.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley.
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Ordinance number 2023-18. Mr. Frampus.
Make another motion. We accept the first reading ordinance 2023-18 as written.
Mr. Bentley.
Second.
All right. Any discussion on this one? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Now we're up to item 5E, small-scale amendment for property located on the west side of Griffin Lane. That sounds familiar. You want to combine those two, E and F?
Yes, sir, if you
Okay,
would.
thank you.
So again, yes, even for city properties in Mr. Attorney, I don't know that we need to talk about quasi-judicial here.
It's the same standard as the last one.
Does anyone have any disclosures for the Griffin property?
Okay.
I see none, so continue. Thank you.
Okay. Again, what's really relevant here is what are we going to designate the FLU, the future land use, and the zoning. So that's what the next few slides talk about. So for the future land use in Brevard County, that lift station had a residential 4 designation. In the city, it's really doesn't make sense to have that designation. It is an institutional owned property, so it's going to have a designation of institutional. These are the property photographs of that lift station, and that's at the end of Griffith Lane. That's what you would see behind that fence. The surrounding future land use, by and large, you've got, the low density residential and single family residential. Even in the county, you've got that. The notices, again, were sent to the property owners. And the lift station, although it's not a residential use, it's just like transformers or anything else you have in neighborhoods that serve that neighborhood, the residential area. So you're going to find those, occasionally in the surrounding areas. We do the same comprehensive plan review, and there's obviously no impact on water services, and it's a sewer lift station. Even if this developed as some other municipal use, or let's say the lift station got larger, it really wouldn't have any impact. So there's no concurrency or capacity impacts that we need to analyze for this. It is consistent with the institutional designation and some of the goals, objectives, and policies that we state for that designation. So that's what this slide talks a little bit about. And again, this is all in the staff report that was part of the packet. For the public service standards and infrastructure systems, which is a different chapter in the comprehensive plan, it is consistent because, as we say, the city's providing sewer services to its existing customer base, and this property is used to facilitate that service. Like I said, it could also be used to, upgrade that particular facility to serve additional folks. Now switching gears to the rezoning. So agenda item 5F is in Frank. Again, in the county, it had a residential zoning district, that same R-U-11. And in the city, instead of giving it a residential designation, it's an institutional-owned piece of property. It makes sense to have it be zone P1, which is institutional. Similar analysis for the surrounding property owners, and it is consistent with the city's land development regulations. So this also was heard by your Planning and Zoning Board as your local planning advisors on August 9th, and they did recommend approval of the small-scale map amendment, and they did recommend approval of the rezoning. So in conclusion, based on their recommendation, we're asking if you would consider for agenda item 5E to approve the first reading of ordinance number 2023-19, and then for agenda item 5F for the rezoning, if you would consider approving the first reading of ordinance number 2023-20, and if the city attorney could read those two titles, please.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2023-19, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending the future land use map of the comprehensive plan to change the future land use for a .06 acre parcel of land located on the west side of Griffith Lane as more fully described herein, from Brevard County Residential 4 to City of West Melbourne Industrial, providing an effective date. And ordinance number 2023-20, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, rezoning parcels of land totaling .06 acres located on the west side of Griffith Lane from Brevard County RU111 to City of West Melbourne P1 institutional, providing an effective date. Thank you.
Does anyone from the public wish to address City Council on these two topics? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Ms. Adams, you're first.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Fisher, I know you had said that from the staff report, the future land use change and the rezoning won't have an impact in terms of if the lift station grows to a bigger size or we have to change it for any reason. Do either of these two agenda items, if we change them the way it's written, impact the houses in that area?
No, it doesn't change those houses in the area.
I mean, just in
fact,
terms
it
of
makes
effect, because we have potentially institutional, which I know can be other things put there, and so I don't want residents to worry about, well, one day it may change from a lift station to being something we're going to squeeze there in the corner. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. I guess I also look at it from the perspective that previously the lift station was non-conforming. It didn't conform to the residential zoning and the future land use it had in the county. Now, City Attorney, I don't know if you want to chime in on that, because, you know, the technical answer is when we've had things like this from the private, the way we ensure that there isn't going to be a switch in the future is with a development agreement, but it is a city facility, so I don't know how that affects it.
Yeah, I mean, as a practical matter, any changes would need to come before City Council, because this is a lift station, number one, and if we were to tear out a lift station, I don't know that the land would even be usable for anything else. Number two, it's an extremely tiny piece of property that really doesn't have any practical use other than a lift station.
Yeah,
So,
and he's absolutely right. In the P1 zoning district, one of the things that's written in there is any change from what it is used as has to go through the public hearing process, which is different than our other zoning districts. So that's a good reminder.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
With that in mind, I'll make a motion to approve the first reading of ordinance 2023-19, changing the future land use from Brevard County RES 4 to City of West Melbourne institutional.
Thank you, Mr. Bentley.
Second with a question.
Okay, you have the mic.
Thank you, Mayor. To her point, wouldn't that be true with any lift station if
Yes.
that were going to be a concern? We'd have to worry about, all right.
If it has that P1 zoning, the institutional.
Right.
If it doesn't have that, then that's a different story.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have ordinance 2023-20. Do we have a motion?
Excuse me.
Mr. Bentley?
Guess somebody else is making a motion there. I make a motion that we approve the first reading of ordinance number 2023-20, rezoning the city lift station from Brevard County single-family residential to City of West Melbourne institutional, with the condition that the small-scale comprehensive plan amendment is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Frampus. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
I only have a few more, I promise.
Okay. Then you can have the floor.
Okay.
Item G.
So this is agenda item 5Gs and girl. These are some amendments to CP, stands for Commercial Parkway Zoning District. And the background on this is that, you know, the city's zoning came about in 1970, as with many of the local governments here in Brevard County. In 2017, the city created some new zoning districts, and we changed some of the boundaries of the CP zoning district. And some of that commercial New Haven and commercial Wickham took over what had been commercial Parkway on both New Haven Avenue and on Wickham. In 2021, the previous city attorney, you know, helped us delete multifamily residential use as a use that would be allowed in commercial Parkway. But we were not aware that there was still a reference to residential in a section of that zoning code that talks about accessory uses. So it's confusing, and we've had people call us and ask us, what does it mean? And so just to clarify that's where I think because we only have 6 areas in the city limits that have that zoning, and I'll show you on a map. I know that wasn't with your packet, but I will show you. So this is basically what we're doing. If you look at what's stricken through in red, remember that this is a section that says prohibited uses. So it would just be very simple, prohibited uses, and then we would list number 1, residential use, and you wouldn't have that phrase afterwards. And that phrase is what caused some confusion. So people read the first part, residential uses, and then they read that second part, and they're like, well, wait a minute, is it or is it not? And so we're just trying to make sure that it's not confusing. This is the zoning map that I was telling you. We've got 6 areas in the city that have the commercial parkway zoning. So not that very many areas left. and most of these areas are developed on the west side of I-95, on the north side of New Haven or US 192. We do have some property, about 20 acres, that has commercial parkway. So there are some areas, but by and large, that's where you're going to find your Sam's and your Publixes and all that. There's, with that commercial parkway that you see sort of circled in blue. Your Planning and Zoning Board, again, acting as a local planning advisory committee, they met on August 9th, and they did recommend approving the first reading of ordinance number 2023-13, which amends that one sentence that I showed you, that's section 98-365. And we did advertise this in the Florida Today. These ordinances are a little bit different. There's no property owners per se to notify, but we do the announcement in the newspaper because that's what's required still. That's not through Brevard County. So I just want to make that clear. And if the city attorney could read the title, please, and I'll try to answer any questions.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance number 2023-13, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending Chapter 98, Zoning, Article 3, Districts, Division 8, CP District, Section 98-365, Prohibited Uses and Structures of the Code of Ordinances to delete reference to a residential accessory structure being permitted within the CP zoning district, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
Thank you. Again, this is a public hearing. Does anyone want to address City Council? We will close the public hearing section. Mr. Frampus?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion. We approve the first reading of ordinance 2023-13 as written.
Thank you, Ms. Young.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay. Seeing none, all those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. We're getting there. Item 5H. This is a code amendment to modify time period for temporary housing.
Okay, just to remind you all that in 2020, we adopted some criteria for the placement and use of temporary housing after a natural disaster. You'll see in the third bullet, I'll say that we were just at that time, God bless you, being proactive. It was not due to a natural disaster in the city or anything like that. It was really because we had heard how some other communities who had been impacted by natural disasters were wrestling with this whole notion of the zoning code not allowing temporary housing, to the houses that were destroyed. So that's why in 2020, you all as city council approved that you could have temporary housing as long as it was, something that was a natural disaster with a declaration of emergency by the governor. So why are we meddling with this now in 2023? Well, in 2022, with Hurricane Ian in the state of Florida, there were some issues that, the state legislators and the governor and others identified with some of the processing, and it made it so that the temporary housing, which usually was just for 18 months, had to be on these residential sites for longer than that. So then in 2023, the state adopted Senate Bill 250. It went into effect July 1st, 2023, and it says that municipalities have to allow the temporary housing for up to 36 months. So we have in our ordinance right now 18 months. They said, as they do, that they preempt that and would be up to 36 months. And then for some reason, they also changed the word of person to resident. So we made that change. And this is very similar to Mr. Carey provided you all an overview where, he closely tracks a lot of the legislation. The planning department, we track it too to see how it impacts, our day-to-day interactions. And so this was one that came up as a result of us tracking since March, what some of the legislation was. So again, it's very simple change. It's the items in the blue and red. That's all we're changing. It's just a lot of explanation to give you all the background as to, why we're doing those two changes, which is simply to be consistent with Florida statutes. And that's what our conclusion says. Just like the other item, this was published in Florida Today because it's a code amendment, and again, that's still a newspaper requirement by the Florida statutes. And your Planning and Zoning Board did conduct its public hearing last week on August 9th. The Planning and Zoning Board recommended approval of the first reading of ordinance number 2023-14. And if the city attorney could read the title, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is ordinance 2023-14, an ordinance of the City of West Melbourne, Brevard County, Florida, amending Chapter 98, Article 5, Division 6, Subsection 1, or Subdivision 1, Section 98-1151, temporary relocation housing. Section 98-1151A2, time period to allow temporary housing on a residential property for a maximum of 36 months, and Section 98-1151A7, occupancy, to amend the wording from person to resident, providing for severability, providing for conflicts, providing for codification, and providing an effective date.
I was hoping you'd explain the difference between resident and person, but maybe they know. This is a public hearing. Does anybody from the public wish to address City Council? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Mr. Frampus?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll approve the first reading of ordinance number 2023-14 as written.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item 5I, preliminary plat for Sunrise Estates.
So with that agenda item, it is a public hearing, and what had occurred, we found out shortly before the Planning and Zoning Board, is that staff had erred in the date that we advertised. And since, you know, there are affected parties adjacent to Sunrise Estates would be that property to the south of Space Coast Town Center. So it's on the south side of the canal, so kind of picture in your minds where that property is off of St. John's Heritage Parkway, and this particular property is west of Brandywine Estates. So we told the applicant that we could not, legally, we could not go forward at the Planning and Zoning Board on August 9th if we had advertised incorrectly for August 8th. So the same holds true for City Council, even though we advertised the correct date for this meeting. By our code, these preliminary plats have to go first to the Planning and Zoning Board, and then they come to you. So that's the delay of a month. So that's what we're asking for. If you could make a motion to postpone the public hearing until September 20th.
Thank you. Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd make a motion we postpone the public hearing for the Sunrise Estates preliminary plat until September 20th, 2023, so it can be re-advertised properly.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
I'll second.
And Ms. Fisher, do we have, is this for the public also to input?
Yes. I mean, you certainly could because it's under public hearing.
Right, but since we're postponing it, so anybody from the public wish to speak on this topic? Seeing none, we'll close that part. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. 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 Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. They'll bring it back September 20th. And our last one looked like we're doing the same with a different piece of property.
We are exactly the same. So the Space Coast Town Center, remember, is on two sides of the roads. So this is on the west side of St. John's Heritage Parkway. And it was in the same batch that we advertised incorrectly as staff. So yes, we have to also postpone that to September 20th, if you so please.
Thank you. This is a public hearing. Is anybody from the public wish to speak on this postponement? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Ms. Young?
I'll make a motion to postpone the public hearing for the Space Coast Town Center West preliminary plat until September 20th, 2023, so that the project can be advertised for the correct Planning and Zoning Board hearing date.
And I'll second that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right, we got through that. Now we're up to the public forum where speakers are allocated 3 minutes to address City Council. Our first speaker, former P&Z board member, Harry Stapler. Welcome back. Harry?
Harry, you're on.
Oh, I'm sorry. You want to speak on during the item itself. Okay. Hold that thought, Harry. All right. Do we have any public forum cards? Okay, very good. We have the consent agenda. We have 2 items on this. Approve the regular city council minutes of August 1st and adopt resolution number 2023-10. Ms. Young?
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Okay. Do we have a second? Second from Deputy Mayor Frampus. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the action items for tonight. Solid Waste Services Franchise Agreement, and we do have one speaker.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. It is with great pleasure and several meetings and hours of work by a phenomenal staff that helped put this together. We are in the final stretch here of our service agreement for waste hauler. Just want to point out a couple of items for the good of the group as to some of the key service changes of this agreement versus past agreement, and then I'd like to touch base on the request of the council to try to negotiate a better price and how that turned out, and then open it up for any questions or comments. The waste hauler, Waste Management is in the room, and so certainly if there's any questions for Waste Management.
Mr. City Manager, maybe we'll get the
Or do you want to go
speaker,
speaker first?
That way, in case there's any questions. Mr. Stapler, would you like to speak now? I will. Okay. No, you're the first and last.
One.
A little more than 3 minutes. Hi, I'm Harry Staper, Manor Place, West Melbourne. I know some of you, others will probably find out who I am. This agreement is used the agreement from 3 May 2011 as a template and marked it up. And there are some problems with that because there's a change in this amendment in the way that yard waste is picked up. It's going to be automatic now and not manual. And that's a consideration. When you go into the definitions, Article 1, there is no definition for the term day. And yet the term day is used in section 3.62 and later on in 5A of Exhibit C. And a day is more than just 24 consecutive hours. And I guess it's kind of like porn, you know, it's hard to describe, but everybody knows it when they see it. Well, this is easy to describe. I believe that a day should be any calendar day, excluding Sundays, and any day that the designated disposal site is closed. Obviously, Waste Management's not going to pick it up on Sunday, and they're not going to pick it up on days that the disposal site is closed. And that's kind of, people might think, oh, well, that's understood. Well, to steal a double entender from the movie Cool Hand Luke, when it comes to the law, nothing is understood. Spell it out. That's what a day is. In Article 3, Scope of Services, Section 333 describes the yard trash. And it pretty much says that you're getting a 96-gallon container that's a little under half a cubic yard. And you're going to be serviced once a week. And if your grass clippings and hedge clippings and tree clippings and what all overflows that container, well, you cannot put them on the ground unless you have a pile that's at least 3 cubic feet in volume. So you're forced to store your overflow from what the cart will hold up to 3 cubic yards on site for pickup the next week. Well, at a half a cubic yard capacity, it will take 6 weeks to pick up an overflow of up to just under 3 cubic yards. And that's if you don't generate any yard trash in the interim, which is a distinct possibility, but the associated occurrence probability is vanishingly small. So you really need to rethink this pile that you can have laying down for the clam truck to pick up being a little less than 3 cubic yards in volume. Because to ask your residents to store their overflow on site for 6 weeks is a little ridiculous. Now, in private conversations I've had with the city manager, he says, oh, well, you can buy your own cart and put your stuff in that, and they'll pick it up. Nowhere in this document, and in this agreement, does it say that subscribers can supply their own carts compatible with Waste Management's lift capacity, and that Waste Management will pick them up for nothing. There is a section in here that talks about if you want an extra cart, Waste Management's happy to provide that, and the cost is exorbitant. We'll get to that in a minute. So that's an omission. And this agreement should be complete with all ambiguities, omissions, inconsistencies, and contradictions removed prior to approval for subsequent execution. You don't have to work on it tonight. Now, I know I don't expect very many of you have read that agreement in detail. You all got your packages on Thursday night, the same time I downloaded it off the web. And I only looked at the yard trash portion of this agreement. I didn't look at any of the rest of the agenda, and you have to. So I don't really expect that you've read it in detail. But I have furnished the city manager and one of your colleagues with a copy of my misgivings in the event that Mr. Rose cuts me off at 3 minutes.
That ship's already sailed, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
In Article 3, or Section 361, the verbiage commences with collectors shall provide curbside collection of white goods, bulky waste, and e-waste on a once-a-week basis. And then it concludes with subscriber shall contact collector to schedule white goods, e-waste, and tire collection. Now the question is, if they're already providing that on a once-a-week basis, why do you have to call ahead to schedule it? And the answer is because those services are on request services. They're not expecting to do that for every subscriber every week. So I think a better formulation for that paragraph would be collector shall provide curbside collection of white goods, bulky waste, and e-waste on an requested basis, not to exceed 1 weekly pickup per service type per subscriber. Now, I think that incorporates it and gets the ambiguity out of it.
Mr. Stapler, can you sum it up?
Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, well, you don't really want to hear what I have to say, I know. I don't suspect things have changed in the last 10 years. So thank you for letting me along this long.
Thank you. All right, any other speaker cards? Thank you. All right. Mr. City Manager, I'm sure you'll share some of those thoughts with us now.
So talking about some of the items that have changed in this contract during the RFP process. Obviously, one of the big ones is the automated yard waste collection once a week. 96-gallon carts will be distributed to all the residents in West Melbourne. We ask that everybody gives it, 60 to 90 days to try out the large carts. Some of them might be too large, but what we find when we distribute carts is typically residents feel the 96-gallon is too large, but after using it for a couple weeks, they tend to keep it. Obviously, if people need smaller carts, we have that option, and we'll coordinate with Waste Management information that people can reach out in order to get the smaller carts. Another service item change, and City Clerk Hanscom, if you could flip to, I think it's 176 in the packet. We are moving to 5-day collection in West Melbourne now. We currently have Monday, Thursday collection and Tuesday, Friday collection. And if you're a Monday, Thursday, one of those days is recycling and one of those days is yard waste, and vice versa for the Tuesday, Thursday pickup. Some of the feedback that we got through the process in order to try to keep the cost during the RFP process as minimal to the residents is all the contractors had requested 5-day service pickup so that their equipment could be utilized 5 days a week. And so what you're seeing on the screen now is the Monday, Thursday, Tuesday, Friday map for garbage service, and so that hasn't changed, although obviously we have some new properties coming to the city, so we've added those. But the next slide goes to the 5-day pickup, and the area, the only area that has been impacted by the 5-day pickup is the section in purple. Now we'll have we'll have Tuesday, Friday garbage service, and Wednesday they will have recycling and yard waste service. So the area in purple has been affected by yard waste and recycling. They will have that service on Wednesdays. Otherwise, the rest of the community, the schedule stayed like for like. So if you were a Monday, Thursday, and your Monday was recycling and your Thursday was trash and yard waste, that'll be a similar schedule. So that's one item, and again, utilizing the ability to utilize their equipment better since they're out there 5 days a week was an item that we worked into the RFP process. The last item, and then we'll talk about moving forward with the agreement. This is, again, a 7-year agreement with three-year options at the end of it. So have the flexibility to take direction in 7 years relative to what direction we want to go based on how the market is. If the market's very competitive, maybe we use that to our advantage. If the market isn't very competitive, then we institute the additional 3-year, one of the additional 3-year clauses. So with that said, bringing this forward with the low bid that we had from Waste Management, again, for the greater good of the audience, we had two contractors bid the service, Waste Management and Waste Pro. Waste Management came in at $27.48 for automated service and $37.48 for manual yard waste service. Selection was $27.48 for automated yard waste service. The city put our negotiating team together, which comprised of myself and the city attorney and our finance director and our assistant city manager. We had a total of 3 meetings with Waste Management team, which is present today, as well as other staff and higher ups from Waste Management. Had a productive process. We were able to negotiate $2 off from $27.48 to $25.48 for each residential property per month in exchange for two significant items. One item was that residents will retain their carts, their garbage carts and their recycling carts. Again, if they are damaged, if they are broken, if they are lost, Waste Management does replace those at no cost. That's not a cost to our end user. The only item that we get a little prickly on is if people call and are upset that their cart is dirty inside. That is something that we encourage them to clean and not replace. That's not part of the service. But damage, as many of you are aware, that's some of the calls that come in. Damaged carts get repaired. If they're not able to be repaired, they're replaced. So that was one of the items, and then the other item was the holiday pickup. Again, during the pre-bid process, the contractors mentioned the challenges that come with next day holiday service. We are the last in the county to have that service, and so one of the items that Waste Management put on the table was not to do that holiday service in exchange for the $2. We had a negotiation process with them. I think the feedback we initially got, because we have twice a week waste service, not so much of a big deal to not have that service. That comes up 5 times a year, again, for the greater good of the audience. The facilities owned by the county that take the waste are closed 5 times a year: Veterans Day, Thanksgiving, Christmas Day, Veterans Day, and the 4th of July. The yard waste being a service that is a little bit under the control of the resident. Obviously, if storms come through, not so much, but if you know that your yard waste, it's a holiday and your yard waste wouldn't be collected, you do have some flexibility to not do your spring or fall cleaning on one of those days. And so we strongly requested that we were interested in keeping recycling, because it is a once-a-week service, and with the continued increase of people working from home and Amazon and all the joys that go in the recycling cart, and that we thought that would be the best service to try to retain for next day holiday, due to especially being around the Christmas, that's a long time to go, 2 weeks without being able to utilize that recycling cart. So the final negotiation came out that they would include next day holiday pickup for recycling, but there would be no next day holiday pickup for trash service or for yard waste. And so with that, we present this contract to you. I have come to enjoy my discussions with Mr. Stampor on several different topics, and appreciate the feedback of some of the grammatical errors and some of the items that he pointed out, and certainly we'll work with Waste Management and get those ironed out as we move forward. But I did want to point out one of his comments. While it's not written in there for additional yard waste with your own container, we have worked with Waste Management, and as long as the container is sturdy enough to be picked up by their equipment, they are open to additional yard waste carts being put out by people and being collected, and that is something that we will communicate with the residents and try to word a little bit better in this agreement when we finalize, if that's the desire of the council. With that, I am happy to take any questions, or if there are any questions for the waste hauler, Waste Management is in the room.
Deputy Mayor Frampus.
I don't know about others up here, but I did read the agreement. And I was happy to see that we got it taken care of. I know it was a long process, and thanks to the city staff for doing this and getting it done. Was happy to see the savings, and I know we had to give up a little bit for the savings, but I think what we gave up wasn't altogether that significant. Was also happy to see the brown lids we talked about for the yard waste.
Sorry, for the sake of the audience, currently green lids are for waste, yellow lids are for recycling, and brown will be for yard waste.
Does it still hold true that you could use your regular trash container as well with yard waste? Is that still?
Yeah. So we do want to clarify. So if your only using your garbage cart for yard waste, and you can clearly identify that it's just yard waste with no waste, no trash or garbage. I hate to use the word garbage because that's, not a technical term. Waste Management is open to that. They are having some trouble getting past the recycling because of some of the recycling statutes. They don't want to intermingle anything with yard debris with recycling. So they are open to, especially the purple, the Wednesday customers, if there's nothing in your trash container and your waste container and you want to fill those up with yard debris and it's yard debris only, they will service that.
Great. So that being said, I'll make a motion. We approve the 7-year solid waste service contract with the option to extend with the Waste Management, Inc. of Florida and authorize city manager to execute the agreement on behalf of the city.
We have a motion from the Deputy Mayor. Do we have a second? Mr. McDowell?
Thank you, Mayor. Second that.
Okay.
With question.
Yes.
My question is really around, in as much as we spend a lot of time working on getting the scope of services to where we want it, many times in these contracts, especially long-term, we spend less time talking about what if it goes wrong? What if it goes south? So I would like you to address the severability. I saw the non-material, but I mean, it warrant 12.18 is the severability, which is a paragraph. What if it goes south? And no disrespect, I hope that it does not, but too many times we spend very little time, minimal time on severability.
Yeah, and I'll turn it over to the city attorney to address that issue, but I will point out, any time that the city staff talks about a contract, we always hit the basics, right? It's what's the price, how do we get into this, and how do we get out of this? And so we're happy to discuss that. I will say, for just the greater good of the council and the members in the audience, Waste Management is located in West Melbourne, and we have had a very long relationship with them. We have worked through, in just my 2 years here, we did have one hurricane, one tropical storm, and they were very agreeable to work with through the process. And so while currently, like any agreement, you don't see that relationship breaking down, obviously things could change on their level from a corporate standpoint. And so, how we get out of this agreement, I think there is a well-orchestrated process. It's not meant to be simple, right? We don't want to say, in this multi-million-dollar contract, well, you missed one resident, so we're gonna take our contract and go home. So there are provisions, and with that, I'll turn it over to the city attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. I would point you to Article 10 of the contract, which contains several procedures relating to if we would need to get out of the contract. Most notably in
It's 53, 853.
Yeah, so I'm going specifically to 10.3, which is, I think, 142 on my packet, but I don't know if it shows up the same on the printed one, because I'm looking at the one online. Yes.
3.
Everybody's taking here to get there.
10.3 is termination 49.
49.
So that contains quite a number of provisions that would allow us to terminate the contract for cause. And generally with contracts, if you don't have cause to terminate them, you really wouldn't want to terminate them, right? I mean, the reason we're entering into a long-term contract is because we have every intention on doing business with this firm long-term. However, as I noted, I don't know how you count to get to I, but there are about probably 11 or 12 different for-cause reasons that we could get out of the contract if we needed to, and that's provided herein.
If I can follow up, I also saw the amendment line, which I think is 1217, or was it at the end? I can't remember. 1217 amendment. So is that an area that you would look to then to change if we, I mean, 7 years is, things happen in 7 years, especially with our growth. I just want to make sure that what we do today doesn't have council sitting up here going, darn it, man, why did they sign this without any kind of forethought?
Yeah, so the amendment provision basically just says that we can't amend the contract unless there's a signed agreement by both parties to amend it, which allows us to amend it if we need to.
Makes sense. Anything else, Mr. McDowell?
No, thank you.
Ms. Adams, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor. I too was pleased with the negotiation between the city and the potential waste hauler. I think, you know, continuing to lower that cost for our residents was a good thing, as well as getting the good service that we do receive from Waste Management. The residents that I've spoken to have enjoyed their waste pickup. Many of them have personal relationships that they come out and they talk with the drivers if they stop at their house, so I appreciate that from our waste hauler. One thing I did notice in Article 3, it covers the scope of services that we've put out and then negotiated with them. And I know the only negative feedback that It heard during my time representing the city has been that if a pickup is missed for whatever reason, you know, is it going to be picked up the next day? And I would say typically the answer is yes, because that becomes a priority. But with us moving to this 5th day of the trucks being used, are we expecting that to continue on that next day pickup basis with more trucks being out on the road?
Yeah, it's actually one of the items, thank you for bringing that up, Councilwoman. It's one of the items that we clarified in the agreement. We put in the provision that if somebody calls for a missed pickup before noon, they'll make every effort to get to that day. If they call after noon or 12:01, the expectation is that they'll get it the next day, just so that there's clarity to residents that it's very, again, we get the calls for missed pickups. There's 8,591, I might be off by a few now, residential pickups in the city, and do we get 1 or 2 a week? Yes, we do. Waste Management's not perfect. They do a really good job, but from time to time people miss. We just want to set that expectation, right? Because if you call us at 3 o'clock to say your garbage didn't get picked up, it's really hard, for them to turn the truck around at 4 o'clock and go get your garbage. It's easier to have them hit that at the next day first thing. And so we wanted that clarification of that language so that we can tell people, it won't be picked up tonight, but if you put it out first thing in the morning, they'll get you. So we just spent a little bit more time on clarifying that in this agreement that was missing in last agreement.
Which I appreciate. So in that same vein, we've got this change for the residents, especially the group in purple that would have a pickup on Wednesday, as well as the change of making the phone call, whether it's before noon or afternoon. So are we as a city, do we have the responsibility of reaching out to the residents to make sure they know of that change? Is Waste Management going to work on that communication? I just want to make sure our residents know.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a dual effort, and obviously Waste Management is chomping at the bit to start marketing some of these changes because it's in their best interest to market these changes as best as possible. We will also be co-marketing those changes through our ability to use the water bill, our Friday memo, and of course the website to get that word out in Waste Management. I don't know if Dina's present. If Dina, if you want to walk through your game plan, I know there's still some assumptions as this hasn't been approved, but do you want to walk through your marketing game plan with the council? Maybe just go with the assumption that this gets approved this evening?
Thank you, Mr. Rohde. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and distinguished members of council. Dina Ryder-Hicks, Public Affairs Manager with Waste Management. With me here, Amy Boyson. She is our Communications Manager. So it's an ideal question for Amy, and you are absolutely right. We are ready to go. We have a piece ready for Mr. Bradford to review. We have language prepared. We have a collateral piece ready to go out. And Amy, if you want to discuss the timeline of the piece, we have 2 pieces, actually. One is a postcard that's going to give give residents the knowledge that they are going to be receiving a new 96-gallon yard waste cart. There's going to be some additional information on that postcard as well. When they receive that cart, there will be a flyer attached to it that is going to have information regarding yard waste collection, regarding recycling, regarding bulky waste pickup, how to get in touch with us. Assorted information will be on there, everything that a resident would need to know. So if, Amy, you want to talk about that timeline.
Good evening, everyone. So as Dina mentioned, we are in the works with everything because we knew it was going to be a tight turnaround. So I actually already have proofs. And if all goes planned, we will send those over tomorrow. But as Dina mentioned, we will send a postcard out. We expect that to hit around September 4th or 5th. Informing residents a cart will be arriving at their house in late September. And then when that cart arrives, it will be basically a bag will be hanging from it. And it'll be a collection guidelines covering all collection services, recycling, garbage, yard waste, bulk waste. Our customer service number will have maps of the new day changes, and then we're actually going to do a separate insert about recycling that highlights the things you should put in your cart, and then some of the things that we see in carts that we would not like to see in recycling. If you all have a social media page we can utilize, we can certainly create Facebook posts that you all can post. Typically with those, we will drive residents to your city website, and then on the city website, we provide the same collateral that we're sending out so residents can see it that way. But I just did a cart rollout in Sebastian about a month ago. It went very smoothly using these tactics. I'm doing another cart rollout in Okeechobee using the same things. So we feel that they are effective by sending something in the mail and then actually attaching something to the cart.
Will that piece include information for residents about the different size of carts if the 96-gallon is too big for them?
Yeah, we usually include a little note that says, hey, try it out for the 60, 90 days, but if you're not satisfied, then contact us.
Okay, thank you.
Questions? Are you going to put stickers on the different carts so people really know what day they are supposed to do it? Because I see a lot of confusion out there even today. What item? I mean, originally y'all used to say Monday, Thursday, garbage pickup, but a lot of the carts don't have that anymore. So are you going to go retro some of those carts and put those stickers on there so the public really knows? Because, you know, the half the things all this paperwork you get, they don't really read a lot of that, as you know.
Well, again, the only day is changing is the purple, the Wednesday day. Everyone else is going to remain the same. So they're going to have that map that is going to designate for the Wednesday service day. So that's the only day that's changing. So there is no plan at this time to put stickers on all of the existing carts because most of the days are not changing.
And how are you going to let the people know that they can use 2 carts of different color, brown and green?
Generally, residents call us and they will ask us that question. So if they call us and ask us that question, I mean, it will say specifically on the piece that the brown lid is your yard waste cart. A lot of times residents will call us and say, if I have overflow, can I use my garbage cart? Can I use my recycle cart? Our agents will advise them that you can use your green lid cart only if it's only yard waste in that cart, and it is very obvious to the driver that the only thing contained in that cart is yard waste, as Mr. Rohde mentioned.
So why do we have to put the onus on the homeowner? Why can't y'all advertise that to all our residents?
We can add things to the flyer. If it gets too wordy, people may miss that. I mean, that is, you know, is there still time to add something to that flyer, Amy, at this point?
We certainly can. That's going to be a wordy, confusing message, but we certainly can add, if you're not using your garbage cart, but again, they can't have any garbage. I mean, they can't even bag their yard waste because that's a requirement by the Brevard County landfill. So we can certainly add it, but it may be a bit confusing.
We always talk about education, and I would think this is part of the education. Again, one of the major problems with recycling is there's so much contamination with that. Somebody's failing, whether it's the homeowner or waste management or the other WM, because people are contaminating that all the time. They're putting in plastic bags, and you don't open those, and they put in hundreds of things that, as you know, that's why we're paying extra for that.
Absolutely. That's why we will be that piece on recycling. So
Okay.
hopefully more and more people understand the reasoning behind why recycling right makes sense.
All right.
The more we can keep out of the landfill, the less expensive it will be for all of us.
And can you address the speaker's definition of the day? I want to make sure we're clear on that. So.
I mean, the contract is pretty specific regarding whether or not it's a business day. I think most of us understand what constitutes a business day. If we're operational, that is a business day. So there are things that specifically state business day. I mean, if Mr. Rohde wishes to add a definition of day or business day, you know, that is certainly something that we would be happy to take a look at. I'm sure Mr. Carey probably even has definitions in other contracts regarding such things that we could add in.
And one of the things that I heard spoken about tonight is storm debris. I want to make it clear to everyone, you're not responsible for storm debris. Is that correct?
That is correct. Thank you, Mayor, for bringing that up.
During a hurricane or a tropical storm event.
As opposed to?
Well, we had a gray area here. We had a little bit of just a little bit of a hailstorm that came through, and Waste Management did a great job of collecting that. So I think the designation that we have in the agreement is if it's been declared as if the county is declared or the governor declares, then we move forward with our FEMA operation, which is yard debris collected differently. If it's not, then it's on Waste Management to collect.
All right. And one of the big things, my last question is, you're always saying call in, but a lot of us, when we call in, we're getting Tampa or some other place or some other state, and they don't know the rules in West Melbourne versus the other. So sometimes we would get fed the wrong information. So who do you want us to call? Always call the city or your personal cell number or?
Mayor, you are welcome to call my personal cell number.
Okay, thanks.
But yes, please call us at 321-723-4455. That is our local number. You will get a Florida Q representative that has all of the West Melbourne contract information in front of him or her. So it doesn't matter if he's sitting here or she's sitting here in our office in West Melbourne, or if they're in Tampa, or if they're in South Florida, or wherever they are seeing all of the information specifically for the West Melbourne contract. So they will have all of that at their fingertips. The other thing that residents can do now is if they need to schedule a bulky waste pickup or a clam yard waste pickup, they can also do that online. They can do that through a live chat. They can also do it on the WM.com app. So they can put in their address and it says for home, and they can schedule it directly from there. It's the same thing as if they called us. It comes directly to our local dispatch center where it's routed and collected. And Mayor, to your point earlier too, the reason that we have that call-in requirement for white goods, for tires, and for e-waste is because those items in Brevard County are recycled. We are required per the county to pick those up with a different truck and take those to a recycling center at Sarno where those items are recycled. So because they're not picked up with the general bulk truck, we pick those up with the flatbed for recycling. So that's why we need that call for service.
And you are picking up tires, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
4 tires. The county allows 4 tires, 4 passenger tires per residence per year. Again, that is a county rule. They will allow 4 passenger tires per year per residence. When our driver goes to the scale house, they are actually required to provide the addresses of where these tires are coming from. And the county presumably keeps track of where those tires are coming from.
And you still aren't picking up wood?
No wood. Wood is, per Florida statute, considered C&D, and all haulers, no matter who it is, we are required to consider wood, meaning lumber, fencing, pallets. We are required to consider it as pressure-treated wood, which means it needs to go to a Class 1 landfill, which here in Brevard County is our COCO CDF. And as a result of that, C&D is, for one, not part of the regular curbside service, and 2, because it has to go to the Class 1 landfill, we're required to consider it as pressure-treated wood, whether it is or isn't.
Thank you. Ms. Young?
Well, I have a whole bunch of questions, and they kind of go both ways, so I'll just ask for here. So if you said, so if a resident realizes that they've been missed, it's early in the morning, they're watching the truck go by, it didn't pick up their things, they call right then, are they going to be able to reach someone who can then get back to the truck to tell them, turn around, you missed 728 or whatever? Will there be time?
Well, the beauty of us being right here in West Melbourne, and Jim Tuggle, our Senior Operations Manager, is right here as well. So, Jim, if you want to chime in on this as well, but generally, Councilmember Young, what happens is when a call comes in for service, it comes into us and it goes immediately when they speak to our agent immediately enters what we call a ticket. That ticket is immediately sent in real time to our dispatch center. Our dispatchers know where every one of our trucks are located at all time throughout the entire county. If they see that a truck is located nearby, that dispatcher can send that alert to that driver and say, hey, I see you're at, the 300 block of Main Street. There's a miss on the 100 block of Main Street. Circle back around and pick that up when you come back around. So sometimes it happens within a matter of minutes. And Jim, do you want to expand on that?
Yeah. Excuse me. Yes, in additional to that, we do have ops specialists, operations specialists housed within our facility here in West Melbourne, and they see those same items as they come across as the dispatchers, and they can get with the manager and have the trucks come right away.
All right, thank you very much. So you had just mentioned wood a minute ago, but if they've called for a special bulk pickup and it's wood furniture, that's treated differently.
Correct, right. Any finished wood product like furniture is considered bulky item. That's not considered lumber or C&D or pressure-treated wood.
But if they throw, and I've seen this, I'm not just not making this up, if they throw wood furniture on top of a brush pile for the clam truck, that's not going to be picked up.
Correct. We are required per the county to have those items separate. Yard waste is picked up as yard waste. Bulky waste is picked up as bulky waste. They go to separate areas.
Okay.
It's because of how the county landfills are managed.
Thank you. And I have other questions, but I'll wait until we get back for regular question time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yep. Question?
I do. I have a couple of them. 90 days for the trial for the 96-gallon. Does it have to be 90 days? I mean, there's people that don't want them at all, or people that know they want the small one, and to have to make them store this for 90 days, does it have to be 90-day trial?
Yeah, as you can imagine, with close to 9,000 customers, it's hard. It becomes logistically challenged. We're happy to work with Waste Management and see what we can do, but going through the rollouts in several communities, and I know here we went through the rollout for waste and the rollout for recycling. There is an efficiency to getting out one size, letting everybody use those, and then adjusting from there. And it's surprising how few people adjust smaller. Now, we know there are some smaller properties in West Melbourne that probably may not even want a yard cart. Because they have a service that takes care of that for them. And so we're happy to try to coordinate as best we can with people, but in general, in trying to do a monumental lift of distributing close to 9,000 carts in the matter of a couple of weeks, the efficiency, it's just trying to be efficient with it and equitable to get it out to everybody. So we can try our best to work with Waste Management.
Okay. All right. So for people that have, like, say, foxtail palms, and they get that long frond that comes off, and I have queen palms, and every once in a while I get just a long one. We used to be able to take that to the curb, and then they manually would come and pick it up and put it in the back. We can't do that now. But one palm frond to put into this 96-gallon cart, I guess you could do that. I know some of them are pretty bulky to handle. If you've done that and you have filled up, as to Mr. Staper's point, you have filled up your cart, your 96-gallon cart, you have, say, maybe a half a cart left over that won't fit in there. You've packed it down as tight as you possibly can, and it just will not fit. To have to wait to continue to store that and then get rid of it a little bit each week after that. It's been said that you can combine it with your neighbors. Maybe your neighbor has room in the cart, or if you're trying to get a clam truck out, 9 cubic feet is a whole lot of waste. I mean, you'd have to...
3 cubic feet.
I'm sorry, 3 cubic feet, 9, okay. is a whole lot of trash that you would have to combine from all your neighbors and rake it all together to get it into one pile. Wouldn't it be better just to have a second tip of it with a second cart that's only half full with that little bit that they have left over? But I understand there's a charge if they have a second cart.
If a resident requests a second cart, there is a fee for that. The cart is free, but then there is a monthly fee for that. And we have currently nobody with a second cart.
But doesn't it cost more to have a clam truck come out and pick these things up? If they, I mean, they're right there. They could just pick up a second cart in 10 seconds.
You could also use your trash container as a second.
But if you have trash, then that's why you have a trash container for trash.
If you have trash, you could have a second cart that you could purchase from Home Depot or Lowe's and utilize that.
Well, then aren't you charged for that tip?
No, you wouldn't be charged.
So it's only if you use the second waste management cart. But if you
Correct.
have your own sturdy
I think that's at the
cart.
discretion of waste management, though. I mean, if a resident has 10 Home Depot yard carts each week, I think that'll be something waste management will have to address. That's between the resident and waste management. If they want 10 official carts, then that could be added to their bill. And
what's the difference?
Well, the official carts, when you go through us to get an additional cart, there is a monthly fee associated with it.
I don't know that that would happen all that often, that people would have to have 10 carts consistently.
Correct.
It could happen. So, all right, so getting back to stickers and things, that was a real good point that we brought up. I certainly, if I have to have them printed myself, will make stickers for people to stick on their carts, because they're not going to remember, especially in the new purple area, Clements Woods, Oak Grove, West Melbourne Landings, Manchester Lakes. I'll be happy to walk there and knock on doors and give them their sticker with their new days on it, because I know they're not going to remember. Recyclables. It says in here, recyclables, aluminum, steel, and bimetal containers, but it doesn't spell out aluminum beverage cans, because otherwise you're going to get aluminum lawn furniture. It says steel, but it doesn't mean like steel tennis ball cans. You don't want lawnmower blades or other kind of steel. Bimetals, I don't even know what all bimetals are, other than soup cans are okay, some things others. So maybe that could be a little clearer as to what steel and what aluminum. As I said, you're going to get downspouts, aluminum gutters, because people know aluminum is recyclable. So if it's aluminum, they should be able to put it in the cart, and we know that's not the case. So I'm just asking for more clarification in the final contract.
Happy to take a look at those definitions.
Okay, and then also, we know when people are preparing for a hurricane coming, even if it misses us and they're getting ready for it, that's the time they trim their trees and they bring all the trash out. Will there be an availability of getting clam trucks out when it is 3 cubic yards or more frequently, if that's the case, if they're gearing up for that? Sometimes they do it the night before and put it on the curb. We know that happens.
I would say anybody who trims all of their trees the night before a hurricane gets whatever nature gives them, that's what they get. Unfortunately, if they're new to Florida and they decide to trim all their trees the night before a hurricane.
The night before is a bit extreme to expect someone to come out, but if they're doing it during that week prior to the hurricane is impending on us, more availability to clam trucks.
I would suggest, and I think the better way to market is we've put out one piece. I'm happy to work on a second piece to start reminding people that we are in hurricane season. Don't wait until we are in the cone to think about trimming trees and prawns and all that good stuff. So I think the better approach to that is marketing, continuing to market now that people need to be thinking about these things, because there's too many other things to be worried about those last 2 or 3 days before a hurricane, if we are unlucky enough to be back in the cone. So,
thank you very much. Those are my questions. Thank you.
So to follow up, I know you said about 7 or 8 things that you'll get back you'll work with. So looking forward to hearing those. But one of the big things is there's very many yard service companies that are commercial that are mowing yards, and they're not allowed to put debris in our cans. Is that correct?
That's what the contract has been for years, and that's what the contract currently is now.
So again, if somebody doesn't want the can because they don't mow their own yard or do their thing, what will be the mechanism to get those picked up so they can use them other places?
So that information will be on the flyers, and then they can reach out to Waste Management to get those picked up.
All right, thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor, signal by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Welcome, 7 more years, 84 months.
Just 84 months. You're on the clock, Waste Management. You're on the clock.
All right. All right, next item is Hollywood Boulevard Reuse Water Line Replacement Project. That should be rejected, according to the city.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, Council members. I don't have as many as Mrs. Fisher, but you got me for the next 3.
Yeah.
This is the Hollywood Boulevard Reuse Water Line Project. There's been some repairs on the line over the last few years, which triggered the RFP, request for bids, that we sent out back in July. We had a couple contractors come to our pre-bid meetings. We received a bunch of questions. However, we only got 1 bid. After reviewing the bid, I sat down with our engineer. He submitted a letter, and based on this bid, we are recommending that you reject this bid from Metro Equipment Services in the amount of $2,964,910.
And how much do we have budgeted for this?
$440,000 for this year, $1 million for next year.
Wow. All right. Mr. Bentley?
Thank you, Mayor. I'd make a motion I do have questions as well. I'd make a motion that we reject the bid from Metro Equipment Services per the recommendation of the Capital Projects Manager.
Thank you, Ms. Adams.
I'll second, and I have a question as well.
Mr. Bentley?
Will we work with this vendor to negotiate on the price?
Well, I guess that's entirely up to you. There's a lot of discrepancies in their numbers, which has kind of got us to this point. For example, if you wanted to look on...
Yeah, the 5X linear foot charge.
Yeah, if you looked on page, for you, it's 8B-5, 6A and 6B, just for example, 1,540 square feet of pipe, they were charging $1,245 a square foot. We have not reached back out to them based on either their carelessness on the bid, the actual pricing that we came out to. We gave an example on the engineer's bid. The average is about $288 a square foot, linear foot. Even if we took the high one, we're somewhere in the $450,000 range versus the $1 million range. But if you direct us,
currently with the way the statutes are written, we're not able to renegotiate any kind of bid price from a contract. We'd have to either go out to rebid or reject. You know,
so is
that's
the
why we're
plan to
rejecting.
continue to repair as needed? Or
They did put in there that they were going to, they believed that when the extension of Hollywood Boulevard happened, there was a possibility of extending out that project during that period. So that was in there.
Thank you.
Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not sure whether it's for Mr. Rohde or you, sir, but in terms of, I know that this project, if we are rejecting the bid today, it would be moved forward to a future project involving Hollywood Boulevard. Knowing where this bid came in at versus when I spoke with Mr. Rohde, we had ballparked where we had expected the bid to come in at. With that information, are we looking to just sort of tag the amount of money that we're expecting to spend on it in the future in the budget and just kind of put it aside as we move forward? Or is that something that we're really not going to worry about until that Hollywood Boulevard project comes forward?
I'll leave that over to Mr. Rohde.
So, yeah, currently we made a run at this project. You know, we identified this project as the next project to tackle due to the breaks, as many of you are aware. We've had numerous breaks, and we've had some issues. Each time it breaks, we were able to identify that there were some installation issues when it got put in, and that's leading to some of the breaks. And because it runs down the center line of Hollywood, unlike other breaks of other utilities that don't, that are just on the side of the road and don't really have an impact, being in the middle of Hollywood really screws up traffic, and so it's not ideal for contractors to be working out there. It's not ideal for the traffic. The county, as we know, we got to work with the county anytime we're in their road, and so it was identified as a good project to get out of the way in knowing that Hollywood was coming. We have the option now, because of the price, we feel it's probably best to wait until the Hollywood Road gets done and then be part of the Hollywood Road project, because part of what they are requiring us to do is remove the old reuse line in the middle of Hollywood. And so that was one of the challenges. And so this one, sometimes you bid, sometimes it just don't come in. We got one contractor, whether he miscalculated or whether he figured, hey, I'll shoot for the moon, and if I'm the only bidder and you need to do the project, you're in good situation. So it was very discouraging. However, as projects coordinator Petroni will show on the next project, we were very pleasant surprised to have 4 bidders and a very competitive bid process and a great number. So just when your hope is lost, it's restored. Why the other contractors who bid on one project didn't stick around and bid for the second project, we will never know. But that's part of Mr. Petroni's role, is to help identify these and keep these trends. We are hearing rumors from our other municipal contacts out there that we may have hit the peak of pricing and starting to see some of these pricing come in a little bit better. Now, obviously, the Hollywood doesn't represent that, but it certainly does represent that on the next project. And so
we're still expecting to keep the money.
it's stormwater utility money. So it's wastewater utility money. So keep in mind it's in that bucket. We have identified, as the council's aware, for the greater good of the audience, we did a reuse impact analysis through one of our engineering firms to help identify, as part of our CUP permit for the new water plant, we had to increase the amount of reuse out into the community. And so we did a study to identify projects. Hollywood ranked extremely high because of the breaks, but at the end of the day, we have many other projects to move on towards and help get that, either beef up the system or expand the system in areas to get that reuse out the door. And so that's what we'll focus our energy on, assuming the council rejects these bids.
Fabulous. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So a lot of the cost of this project is because you have to remove the pipes from the middle of the street. You're not going to replace them in the same place, are you?
The county is requiring, instead of a typical thing which you would just grout the existing pipe and leave it in place, they want it removed. It is under Hollywood Boulevard, so that's, I think, causing a lot of the concern.
But the new pipes will not be under asphalt at all.
On the on the west side.
West side, correct. So is there any wiggle room to get them to say, hey, when you redo the road, you're going to have to go down past the base anyway?
Well, we're hoping when they do redo the road, it's easier when they remove it, we can actually remove the pipe and work in unison with them. That's what I would think the recommendation would be.
The only fallacy to that is Hollywood Boulevard is, as our TPO specialist will tell you, is it's not going to happen in another 10, 15 years at the earliest. I mean,
it's a ways down.
Yes.
The only thing I could say, we look back at the repairs. You've had 4 repairs of the line for a cost of the last 4 or 5 years of $75,000.
Yeah.
So when you look at that compared to the cost right now, unfortunately, it does look a little bit better to do the repairs as they come up, unfortunately.
I don't disagree that there's better use for that money than ripping out pipes underneath the road and repaving the road that's going to be torn up in the next, who knows if they'll ever get the money for that. Mr. McDowell?
Thank you, Mayor. Doesn't mean that we won't readdress this issue. Who knows? It could be a couple of years from now, 3 years from now, that before the 10-year window, it could come back up, and maybe it'll look a little different the next time around.
Absolutely.
Yeah, just, again, for the greater good of the audience, the last two significant pipe projects that we did, that we requested that the county be flexible with us, we ultimately annexed those roads to avoid having to take out the pipes. That would be, I might need Mr. Bradford's help. One of them being Meadow Lane, the second road being
Ellen, maybe?
Brandywine. Thank you. It was coming to me. So the last two roads we acquired, Meadow Lane and Brandywine, we acquired to avoid the county's requirement of us digging and removing the old pipe at a very significant cost savings to the city. So we certainly are not, just for the record, we are not recommending we take over Hollywood. So
goodness.
Just to be clear. So that's one of the challenges we were dealing with here. So
Yeah, we'll have our hands full with Ellis taking that over. All right, so we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, should by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Item C, Wickham Road Water Main Crossing Project.
Again, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members. Mark Petroni, your Capital Project Manager. This project entails bringing a water line from the east side, the Metro West Plaza, over to the Plaza West on the west side of Wickham Road. By doing so, the Plaza West is currently serviced exclusively by the city of Melbourne with a main meter. And by doing this, it will now bring them into service of the city of West Melbourne. Once the city of West Melbourne has our water treatment plant going, we can eliminate the water meters. And therefore, yeah, I think just a looping project will make this whole thing make a whole lot of sense. We've received 4 bids on this, and per what Mr. Rohde said, we got a very good one. Our budget on this one was $425,000. The bid that came in from one of the contractors, including the 10% contingency, is approximately $72,000 below budget. So based on that, my recommendation is to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Kachik Utilities for the construction of the water main under Wickham Road, just north of US 192, in the amount of $387,970.
Thank you, Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Rohde, have we worked with this company before?
we have not. They would be new to the West Melbourne utility program, but Mr. Petroni did do background as well as the engineering firm and confirm that they are qualified and experienced in this work.
I just want to make sure. It makes me happy that they came in below bid, but I want to make sure we're getting good quality with our contract.
I was concerned. I checked the 4 references, 3 of which were municipalities, City of Miramar, which is down south, Port St. Lucie, 2 other contractors. This particular contractor used to work for a large contractor that I'm also familiar with. At each of the recommendations where they wish they had more people like that, very reliable, done right, so I felt pretty comfortable. And then our engineer of record also followed up, got the same feedback. So
we like glowing recommendations.
yeah, might be nice to have some new blood in here, but the numbers look good. Even the engineer of record submitted after he reviewed the numbers too. There's a letter of recommendation as well. So
But we will be checking the quality of their work when they're done, correct?
going the whole process and completion.
Fabulous. With that in mind, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the city manager to execute a contract in the amount of $387,970 for the construction of a water main under Wickham Road, just north of US 192.
Second, Rose. It was also good to see that the second bid was only, what, $12,000 difference.
Reasonable.
Is reasonable.
Around 15, so it wasn't too far off, so the numbers kind of made sense.
Yeah, the other 2 are, well, outliers, I guess, way out there, but all right. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. And our last action item is continuing service agreement for professional engineering services.
Yes, again, hi. Good evening, Mark Petroni again.
Mark.
Based on the amount of business or current work that we have and future projects that are ahead for the city of West Melbourne, we put out an RFQ for continuing services to get more engineering firms into the pool. We submitted RFQ out and received 9 firms on it, which we thought was pretty good. We had our evaluation meeting. We scored them based on certain criterias, and you can see how they scored anywhere from the 250s up to almost 300. Based on those criterias, we chose, and we believe that 5 that were over 250 scored over I believe it was 250 or 275, over 275 were the ones that we chose. So those are on Exhibit A. So based on that, we recommend that you authorize the city manager to enter continuing service contracts with each of the professional engineering firms on Exhibit A, which are Civil Serve, Construction Engineering Group, GAI Consultants, Inc., Hanson Engineering, and Infrastructure Engineering Group, LLC.
All right, Mr. Bentley.
And make a motion, we authorize the city manager to enter into continuing services contracts with each of the professional engineering firms shown in Exhibit A.
Thank you, Mr. Frampus. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 7-0. All right. That concludes the action item. Next, we have the management report, where Chief will tell us how we're doing.
Yeah.
I don't know if that, is that on? I couldn't.
Oh, nope. Okay. Thank you. Thanks for allowing me to present on the second quarter activities for the police department. Pleasure to do so. It was a busy quarter, but there was a lot of good accomplishments during that quarter and a lot of good cases that were closed by the police department. Starting off, just, we can make it a regular point to recognize our high performers within the police department. Our officer of the quarter, who will also be recognized at the September chamber luncheon, is Detective Donovan Brickhouse. He had the highest number of cases during the second quarter for the division, and a lot of complex cases. He's really one of the go-tos to solve, to investigate some of the higher profile crimes. And in particular this quarter, he was involved in a number of sex offense investigations that included some, minor victims. And as you might be aware, sex offenses are some of the most difficult to prosecute due to conflicting stories, or sometimes, 8-10 years has gone by, or difference in statements. So he really had a fantastic quarter, and we're happy to recognize him. This is just a short blurb on one of his most recent cases that hit the news recently.
A former associate pastor at an Indy Atlantic church is charged with molesting a teenage boy. West 2's Brevard County Bureau Chief Scott Heidler has reaction from the man's now former church.
Kyle Robinson, a Palm Bay 30-year-old, charged for molestation and lewd or lascivious conduct with a teenage boy. A former associate pastor at First Baptist Indy Atlantic, Robinson was arrested by West Melbourne police on July 28th. Police documents indicate the alleged abuse took place over several years, even on trips outside of Brevard County. The report details the victim as saying incidents of the abuse more than 100 times.
The church tells us that Kyle Robinson's employment here ended last year and that they were heartbroken when they found out about this case.
The church sent us this statement saying, in part, quote, "While we can't delve into details about the situation specifically, we can say, thankfully, and with confidence, due to the policies and procedures we have in place across the board, none of the incidents in question took place on our campus or during a church-sponsored activity." Robinson bonded out with $30,000 on the 2 charges. It's not clear when he will next appear in front of a judge. In Indy Atlantic, Scott Heidler, West 2 News.
So as you know, just cases that involve juveniles, our most vulnerable population, and high priority, and he did a great job on those cases. And as you all received my email today, the late breaking update, he was the lead investigator on the Wendy's robbery. Just some really good police work, trailing back from the location of incident, following his route to travel, and put together a good case that we had actually received an arrest warrant late last week for him. And then he worked with the surrounding agencies and the sheriff's office to assist with, some intelligence on where he might be. So we were happy that he was taken into custody today and gave a full confession to our crime and to the Palm Bay crime. So good work by Detective Brickhouse. We're looking forward to recognizing him. A couple other awards that were within the department. Two of our people achieved educational degrees. One was an associate's and one was a bachelor's degree. So important that they're continuing their education. We had a number of certificates of commendation. One that was a threat to a business where an RPO was issued and approved in cooperation with the city attorney. Abandoned children case and a traffic case that I'll show a short clip on that. And there was a number of letters of appreciation for a stalking victim who was really, our officers went above and beyond, even after the arrest was made, to make sure she felt safe in her home and had the resources to, protect herself in the future. So some of you may have seen this case on the news or our social media, but Sergeant Cattees and the unresponsive driver.
Unresponsive driver who drifted into an intersection. Dash cam footage shows him bringing a moving car to a stop after an unresponsive driver drifted into a busy intersection. Footage released by the West Melbourne Police Department shows Sergeant Justin Cantees waiting behind a blue car, which can be seen moving slowly into oncoming traffic. Police say the driver, a 77-year-old man, had become unresponsive at the wheel. Cantees can be seen exiting his vehicle, then jumping back in and using his police cruiser to stop the drifting car.
So just, quick thinking. I see that with a lot of cases out there on a regular basis, listening to what's going on the streets, and Sergeant Cantees certainly leading the way with that and acting quickly to prevent a larger tragedy. So, of course, that driver was sent for a re-examination request on that. But so just a lot of good work being done on a regular basis. And then final story that was one of our biggest cases of the quarter was the threat to Mac Technologies. And this was a subject who had made specific threats to shoot up the business. It was right after we had another one. I believe it was after the Nashville shooting, very shortly thereafter. And Patrol did a great job. Just the initial response and coming up with a plan on the fly. They didn't really have time to, this wasn't a, hey, we got a day to figure out what to do. And they staged, they approached the business and successfully took them into custody. And then the result of it is this case.
West Melbourne police say what could have been a deadly mass shooting was averted.
Investigators say when an employee allegedly made threats of a mass shooting, concerned co-workers called police. West 2's Brevard County Bureau Chief Scott Heidler spoke with the lieutenant in charge of this case. He's joining us live now from West Melbourne. And Scott, what did he tell you?
Well, they really gave most of the credit, the law enforcement here in West Melbourne, credit to those workers at Mac Technologies because they reached out to the police department once they heard the coworker make those threats about a mass shooting. Marcus Anderson is now behind bars, facing weapons charges. Last Tuesday, he allegedly told coworkers that he had a certain number of bullets for specific people at Mac Technology in West Melbourne.
Yes, he actually had more. But when you hear something, 17 bullets for 17 heads, that's going to create alarm. And having that conversation with those coworkers, it did that such thing. It created an alarm, which made them come in and notify law enforcement.
Once getting the call, police quickly found and arrested Anderson without incident on Thursday. But police say they found a loaded .38 handgun in his backpack at work with an additional box of ammunition. And when officers searched his car, found an AR-15 style short-barreled rifle without a serial number. According to police, Anderson told coworkers that he'd even identified where he was going to carry out the attack and how he planned to escape. In the police report, he told investigators that he was just kidding and was not serious when he talked about carrying out a mass shooting.
This appears to be somebody who, you know, in their mind was formulating a plan. Whether he was going to take that out or not was a plan to hurt people, to kill people. And obviously it's something that, you know, people shouldn't take lightly at all.
West reached out to Mac Technology. They're not making any comments on the incident at this stage.
Nationally, you know, we hear the news, you know, we see the headlines, and thankfully this wasn't an incident that was able to come to fruition where we were able to intervene and prevent something very bad from happening.
Anderson is facing a second West Melbourne.
So obviously, we don't want to be in the news for bad things, but certainly this case, it could have prevented a real tragedy from happening, and we're appreciative of the people that did contact us. So, as far as overall calls during the quarter, I kind of have the stats up here. Just want to highlight a couple things. You know, DUI arrests, even with patrol at minimums, much of the time they really make an effort to take DUI drivers off the streets. And the one thing I talked about earlier in the year was with the change to FIBERS, which is the incident-based reporting system versus the old UCR, which basically took a major crime such as burglary and just ranked just the burglary, where with FIBERS you might have burglary, the damage to property, and several other lesser included offenses. So we kind of expected that some of those stats could go up. So looking at, we're still doing a side-by-side comparison. So if you look at the exact same incidents for the first 6 months of the year under FIBERS, which is the new system, versus the old system, FIBERS is counting 15% more incidents between Part 1 and Part 2 crimes. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that's apples to apples, you know, the same 6 months to the same 6 months. So it's just something to keep in mind as we move throughout the year. I think we're going to keep tracking it through the rest of the year to get a good year picture. And then I would anticipate at the end of this year we won't track UCR anymore. But it's a good thing for us to look at and know, you know, what those changes are. So violent crime, you know, continues to be low. Obviously, you know, some of these ones that make the news are high profile, but thankfully they're relatively rare compared to our size here. Flock cameras continue to be a huge success for us. You know, we've seen cases of recovered stolen trailers, recovered vehicles. We had juveniles that stayed inside the Target after hours, and just based on Flock, we're able to develop a vehicle and then make arrests on that cases. Of course, drug offenders and, you know, regional intelligence bulletins. So if we have these organized retail theft crews that are going around and we know what vehicles they're traveling in, not only here, but, you know, in Central Florida, we're able to make our officers aware before some of those happen. And we've seen cases both down in the Hammock Landings area, but also up off of 192 that officers are interdicting as people are about to commit crimes. So they really are a good tool for us and something that's...
Would we benefit from additional cameras, flock cameras?
Yeah, so we are proposing in next year's budget to add 2 more, I believe it is. You know, we've really been working to strategically put them where entry points or where people might exit, and something we consistently look at. We've also had one that we've kept mobile, and we've been able to move that around a little bit. So as you know, as the years go on, is finding that sweet spot. But I got to say, you know, Lieutenant Romano and his you know, thoughts of crime patterns and where things are happening has really done a good job of most of our incidents that we're having success with with Flock. They're in the right spots right now. So. Criminal investigations and special investigations, you know, a standard level of cases coming through for them. You know, as you know, the suspended cases, some cases they're suspended for a number of reasons. You might have victims that don't want to prosecute. Sometimes you have no information. If a bike was taken at 2 in the morning and there's absolutely nothing to go on, those cases do get suspended. But certainly it doesn't go off our radar, but we do close them after a period of time. And then SIU, they've been very active, undercover drug investigations, prostitution cases, and several ongoing cases that they have going. My last video clip of the night is kind of a highlight of a large case that they did during this quarter that made a substantial difference.
Police say 605 grams of fentanyl are off the streets tonight. They say it's enough to kill more than 300,000 people. 34-year-old Cordero Dante East is now facing trafficking and possession charges. Officers raided a home last Friday, reportedly finding the fentanyl along with meth, cocaine, MDMA, and a pistol. East was arrested later that day, but has since bonded out.
So this case, again, it's still ongoing, and there's a very good chance that it'll be adopted at the federal level, which we would actually like to see. But he's looking at substantial time for that, and also the gun that was recovered. Short touch on the Operation Unified Front. This was a countywide effort along with FDLE to target. Really, the effort was against the fentanyl dealers, but as you can see, a number of different types of drugs were caught up in that. So that's just a testament to the ongoing work that we do with the area agencies too. In our support services division, which is responsible for hiring, recruitment and stuff too, we do have 2 new officers that started in this quarter. One has been released solo, and the other one is anticipated to be released later this month. I do have good news. We had 2 conditional offers that were issued yesterday, so hope to fill a couple of those vacancies too. We had 2 new records clerks start, a new senior administrative aide, and one of our previous records clerks moved to the patrol administrative aide position. So training, as you know, is a very important part. We have our state mandated trainings, but we just recently developed a new active assailant policy, and just in the last couple of weeks actually did training for the entire department on, hopefully that incident that we never have to respond to, but, different scenarios and hands-on training for the entire department. Our accreditation is ongoing. As you know, that's not just a check the box every 3 years when the assessors come out. We have to provide continual proof, random audits of our evidence room, you name it. There's a number of time-sensitive activities that we're doing. And as I mentioned, we did have 9 police applicants, 2 conditional offers. So we have 2 people that are in the academy now, and 2 more conditional offers, so continuing to work on that. We did have 12 applications for our vacant public safety aide position, and we anticipate that person starting hopefully in the next month, subject with a number of years of experience with the county. So, and our sergeant test promotion process is ongoing. Wanted to follow up on vehicle burglaries that we talked about before. So I actually extended into July here, but I thought it was timely that I share it with you. We had said how the previous 2 Julys, our car burglaries had spiked way up, and our crime analyst had, doing what she does and making sure to see what might be upcoming. She made sure that we knew that, July, the last 2 years, were much worse for vehicle burglaries. So we did try to do some social media promotion to say, hey, lock your vehicle, which, probably 90% of vehicle burglaries are to unlocked vehicles. I'm not going to say that one social media post changed it, but the nice thing is I'm happy to report that July, our burglaries didn't have the spike this year that they did last year. There could be a number of reasons, but, that's part of why we do the crime analysis, is to try and get ahead of some of that stuff. So, and then community involvement, number of things going on throughout the quarter. I was pleased to have our first 2 SALT meetings. We've had good attendance at those, over 30 people. Cops on the Coop, I think we raised about $14,000 for Special Olympics. We participated in Hometown Heroes. We expanded some school safety presentations to both the preschools and the private schools to prep them for, any active assailant and considerations. And then, of course, the torch run, which is a part of the Special Olympics stuff. And then finally, to come, we're happy to bring back the Citizens Police Academy. We already have, I think, 12 applications, so it's filling quickly. I think we have until we put a deadline the end of September. I'm hoping it'll be full before that. We'll probably limit it at the most 20, but somewhere in the 16 to 20 range as far as people. So that is the main crux of what's been going on the second quarter for us. So I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Ms. Young, you're first.
Yes, I'm sure you saw in the news where it wasn't one of our officers, but there was an officer who had made a stop and had handled fentanyl, and actually he must have breathed it in. So his partner actually wound up giving him Narcan to save his life. Do we have that ability? Should that happen to us since our officers were exposed to all this fentanyl?
Yeah, we absolutely do. All of our officers carry fentanyl. And then there's another consideration.
Or Narcan.
No, sorry, Narcan for fentanyl exposure.
Rewind.
I was thinking ahead there. You know, the other consideration too is when we have overdose deaths is if you're going to process that scene, we need to make sure that someone inside the residence or the location also has access to that as we process the scene to make sure, you know. The other concern is you've seen canines be exposed to it before. So certainly I heard of a case where they were able to inject Narcan into a canine. So, but it's a consideration, but something our officers do have access to. All of them carry it.
Wow, I didn't think about the canines.
Yeah.
Yes, that's certainly. All right, thank you very much for that. Also, the speed wagons and the speed sign, new speed signs on Wingate are absolutely wonderful. I'm very, very happy to have them there. I hope we get more for other areas that are heavily trafficked, especially, well, I think I'm in the only area with schools, but we certainly have Sheridan, we have Heritage, we have other heavy traffic areas. The speed wagon then is not being used at all, or is it, that's out in the city?
So that was last used on Fell Road in July. We are currently have a problem with the solar inverter to power. So we're back at, we recently tried installing our own part, and we might have to send it off. So, but it will be used throughout the community. But we're having a little problem with the solar inverter right now. The signs on Wingate, yeah, they really are good. The nice thing is we'll be able to access some of the data as to see what the vehicles were doing and how it affected their behavior too.
Can we put a flock camera there?
No,
not necessary?
No, I don't think so. It's not necessarily a route of travel for some of our crimes that are happening.
All right. Tickets versus warnings. On the police chief, on the report that we used to get, there was how many stops were made, how many tickets, how many warnings. I didn't see that here. Are we still doing that?
We are.
Maybe I just missed it. No, I think it is.
So stops through the year are 3,011. And written citations, 1,161, and traffic written warnings, 442, so the rest would be verbal warnings. You know, and that's something that kind of seen nationwide is the percentage of stops that end up in warnings versus citations has adjusted in the last 10 years. It used to be pretty universal, you know, 60, 70% were citations, and I think as the national mood and the pushback on certain things have happened, you've kind of seen this transition to more warning enforcement and trying to change behavior that way. And certainly it's no different here.
All right, thank you. My last question is our previous chief that we came in from out of state had to get his Florida certification. You have to do that as well?
That's correct. I underwent the 9-day equivalency of training academy, and I had to pass the state test, and I did successfully do that.
That's all finished. All right, thank you. Those are my questions. Thank you.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else? We talked about residential burglaries. Do you have the comparison with that versus prior years as opposed to car burglaries? Not comparing the two, but did that spike as well?
So we had a little bit more residential burglaries in June, but overall we're averaging about 2.5 a month, which is too many, but it's not high compared to last year.
Good. And we're getting more business robberies or burglaries or whatever you want to call it?
No, we've had a couple of at the construction sites, and actually one of them where they're taking circuit breakers or stuff that's being stored in these containers. You know, there's one of them that could be considered an inside, you know, someone that had knowledge of it. The other one we're not so sure, but those are attractive sites. You'll see in some places when they're building, they'll try and add cameras and even flashing lights to try and deter it. But unfortunately, those are usually, you know, like even the one out off of St. John's, you know, unattended and, you know, not many cars driving by at 2 in the morning, so.
At the League conference this weekend, there was a number of vendors that was selling things that's interesting, like the flashing speed limit signs, and they're relatively cheap. I thought some of them were started at $3,500, and to different prices. And I know trouble with some of those is the young kids will say, "Well, let me see if I can get it to go to 65, 75, 85." But some of the models you can disconnect that feature, obviously.
Yeah, you can set the high limit that
Yeah.
it won't register anything over, let's say, 50 and a 25, so kids aren't doing that, because that is an attractive nuisance for them.
Yes, okay. Very good. Thank you, Chief, for all you do at the department.
All right, thank you.
When I was a kid, it'd be fun
All right.
on a motorcycle.
That brings us to City Council reports. Deputy Mayor Stephen Frampus.
Thank you, Mayor. Went to the Palm Bay Chamber and the Melbourne Chamber on the 2nd and 3rd. From the 9th to the 12th, a lot of us went to the Florida League of Cities Conference in Orlando. A lot of good information there. Classes were fantastic as always, and enjoyed that a lot. And did just yesterday the 14th was the second ribbon cutting of Sprouts that they set up just for council, and got a nice tour of the market and wound up spending some money there. So that was nice. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Up next is Councilmember John Ditmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, this is going to be a little uncomfortable, but I need to get this out and talk about it right now. This special meeting that's going to be coming up, I want to give some background on what took place prior to that. On about a couple of days after our last meeting, I learned that the mayor was residing up in Vieira and living and rented a space in a gated community where he used to live at renting a room, and and was not living full time inside the city, or was not living at the other location. So, anyways, based on
just one quick question: are we doing this now, or are we going to have a special meeting?
That's what I'm here to talk about, Mayor. Okay. So, anyways, as a result of that, contacted staff, and the reason I want to bring this up is so everyone knows what took place.
Isn't that what the special meeting is for?
No, I wanted the background on it. I just want to give the background. And if we can come up with an option, we might not have to have this special meeting, okay, which might be good for everybody right now. So anyways, when I spoke to staff, they reached out to the mayor. The mayor submitted his initial resignation letter.
No, it was a retirement.
I'm sorry, you're correct. Your retirement letter. And afterwards, the staff reached back out to me, and I asked why was he trying to push out to October. They advised that there was some considerations for transitioning into Medicare, and he needed some time. I asked them to go ahead and say, well, if they could go ahead and extend benefits out till the end of the year. That wasn't plausible according to HR. And they then reached back out to me and said that they had a deal struck where he would be leaving on or about the 1st of September. I said, that's fine, that's great. I will have a great send-off. They ordered him a plaque at that particular time.
Just to be clear, they
contacted me and told me that they had spoke with you and ordered you a plaque.
Is that when they called both of you, or just?
I don't know what they did with them.
With him, okay.
I know something what they did with me. They called me and told me that everything was resolved. They'd ordered a plaque, and everything was going to be moved forward. And I said, okay, that's fine. I let it go. 3 or 4 days goes by, and at that time, the staff told me they believed that they had reached out to the mayor, and it seemed that the things had fell through. They did not receive any communication from him on changing the dates, and then it became concerned that he was not going to move forward in that direction at all. That's when I had asked for the special meeting. Or told them that we need to discuss having the special meeting. The problem that I'm having with this at this particular time is I've issued out one subpoena. It's been returned already with specific information. There's 3 pending subpoenas that are sitting on the city attorney's inbox right now that need to be processed out. There is no possible way that these can be sent out tomorrow, and we'll have this information in a packet to council by Friday. It's just not going to be possible to have that done. I think originally I was told we were going to push this off to September, when's our meeting, 6th? And then it got moved back to we're going to have it on Monday. It's impossible for me to get this information that quickly, okay? So, and there was a response back to one of the subpoenas. I would encourage you all to reach out to the city attorney and get a copy of that response, and you'll see the reasons for why we're here today or why I'm talking about this, and you'll see the information in it. I'm not going to belabor the point. What I'd like to suggest, if we can, is because 2 things. There's no way I'm going to be able to move forward on Monday on this with the subpoenas that are pending right now. So what I'd like to suggest is postpone this until we would be able to have the information that we would need. But in lieu of that also, as the mayor brought up earlier in the meeting, which came and gave me this idea, was he said, I wish that they would define residency. He made that comment because it seems to be the issue of trying to figure out what our charter says when it comes to residency and how we might define residency throughout our other city ordinances. So I talked to the city attorney about this about a week ago, I think, or a few days ago. And I asked him, I said, what would be a solution to our problem with this? And he recommended, or at least maybe, I don't know, we both did or we talked about it, was that the council give direction to correct that issue and define the residency in the charter. And if we did that, that would keep problems in the future from happening again. And because there was a problem, I guess, with a council member that was here several years ago. I can't remember how long ago it was, but I think it was Mr. Bentley's neighbor, I think, at one time. Anyways, and there was an issue where he was living out of the state and wasn't here and so forth and so on. So what I'd like to suggest doing is give direction to staff or to the city attorney to draft a solution for this. I know this is going to take some time, probably 4 to 6 weeks before we can get this done. Maybe we won't have our first reading until October, and that would give us some time to push through with this. I would postpone this, and Mr. Frampus has his option to try to push forward. We do not have the paperwork back. It's going to take at least 3 to 4 weeks to get the rest of these subpoenas in, to get this information in. I think this situation may resolve itself over that period of time. And if this council is willing to allow the staff to work on an ordinance to fix that problem, and I'm not trying to get them to fast track that, but work at a normal pace, that we would probably be looking at an ordinance to fix this probably sometime. First reading maybe in October sometime, you think?
This depends on, the research that needs to be conducted, and it depends on the feedback I get from you all. If everybody loves the first one and approves it on if everybody loves the first one and approves it on first reading, it would obviously be passed on second reading sooner. If you all want changes, we may need to have an additional reading. So just depending on how significant the changes are. So, yeah, I mean, maybe October for first reading. Just throwing that out there. And
the second thing too, also, one of my witnesses that was going to come in and testify was the Woodfield Homeowners Association president. She just had major surgery. She was going to attempt to actually stop in tonight, but she can't, so she's going to be recovering for the next few weeks anyways. I want to give her an opportunity. She wants to speak to the issues now that they have in the community because of this arrangement, what's going on, and I think it would be more than fair. So is council willing to, give direction for that? And I'll pull this meeting, this special meeting, and we can postpone to, not even postpone, we'll just pull it till we get some kind of direction on our city ordinance that would define this. Does anyone agree with that? Because if not, we're going to end up having more problems later down the road trying to define what a resident is in our charter. Issues, concerns, or do we just move forward?
Ms. Young?
I have a question. Are we just determining residency if you serve on this council? Because there are many people in the city of West Melbourne who have two homes, maybe even three homes on maybe the other side of the state. And if they, in fact, Scott Morgan, we know he doesn't live here. He lives in North Carolina. I told him, by the way, I was going to use his name tonight. He lives in North Carolina, but he still claims that then he votes from his home here in West Melbourne. And you don't have to own a property. You can rent and still, claim and still live in West Melbourne and still be considered a resident. So do you give up that right in order to serve here? Because I don't know how many.
I think the, and I can answer that question for you. The state says you can have a lot of, this recent case law says you can have a lot of temporary local residents, but only one permanent residence. And in this particular case with the mayor, I can define it. I have an affidavit signed by him, and also an indication of him living full time in Vieira, that he made that statement to those folks up in Vieira that he actually lives full time there. So, and these are his words, not mine. So I think what's important here is that we define for the charter, number one, because we don't want people to come here, rent a place somewhere, rent a bedroom somewhere, and then establish residency for a year, and then they're running for office. I think that it's a complete misrepresentation for the community. I think it would set a bad precedent later down the road as well. So I think it clears that up. And the state, and from what I can tell, they leave it up to us. They leave it up to the local, if we want to establish what residency is. And I think we can clear that up and define what that actually is. I think, do we want someone to be able to rent a bedroom and say that they live here?
But they could with what's in there right now. They would be a resident of West Melbourne 1 year prior to running.
If they're running, correct. And if they live full time somewhere else.
So we need to fix our charter, and we have to do that once every 10 years. So we can do it more.
I did ask that, and he said we could actually just define it through the ordinance. We can define residency through the ordinance. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, the charter contains the word residency, but certainly you could use the code of ordinances to define criteria that indicates residency.
Right, but it wouldn't be retroactive. It wouldn't change what's already been done. It would just be going forward. So it wouldn't change our situation here at all. It wouldn't be, the ordinance wouldn't be retro, would it?
So the charter says that not only must you meet residency upon qualifying, but that you must maintain residency. So if there was an ordinance defining residency, the ordinance would go into effect upon second reading, and at that point, if you didn't meet the standards for residency, you would fail to maintain residency. So it wouldn't invalidate anybody's qualifying from years ago or anything like that, but it may impact whether they can maintain residency currently.
So it is retro. We can bring in something new that changes.
No, right. It would apply as of the date of passage, or you can word them so that it applies 10 days after the date of passage or something. However, it's defined in the ordinance, but it would apply then. It wouldn't be retroactive, so it wouldn't impact anything that happened before that date.
All right, and then it applies only to this council. It doesn't apply to residents.
Depends on how you want to write it. I mean, so when you say residents, what I take from that is you mean the other advisory boards, because it wouldn't apply to, the residency for the purpose of the charter applies to people who are running for office currently. So it wouldn't apply to residents in the sense that for voter rolls, for example, because the supervisor of elections determines that, not us. But currently, the charter is what discusses residency, and it discusses it in terms of people who are running for city council. So I think we would want to limit it to that.
All right, thank you.
Mr. McDowell?
So if I heard you correctly, the effective date could be made at the following of this term, based on your remarks.
If that's the way the council wanted to structure it, yes.
Say that again. I want to make sure I understood what you said there. Please, thank you.
What I asked the city attorney is, he said we can make it effective whatever we deem it to be, and we can make it effective as of the next term of 2025.
You mean in 2024, November, right? Right.
Deputy Mayor Frampus.
Okay.
So are you really suggesting we leave it hanging for a year and, excuse me? I was just asking a question. Oh, I thought you were suggesting. I'm in favor of moving forward with what we're doing, so you know, I don't, you know, I think we need to define. Apparently, there needs to be some clarification. If people don't know what residency means, then that should be clarified. But I still like the residency question answered that I questioned in the charter. Thank you.
So I just, is there 4 people here that are interested in having a ordinance define what residency is in the charter? Yea or nay? Otherwise, we'll have these issues. Anybody else? You want to leave it just the way it is? Yeah.
I think that date's important, and I know Mr. Frampus is saying he wants to go forward now. I think you might get 2 different answers if you say November of 2024 than if you try to say effective now.
Okay. So, and I want everyone to understand, and I want the mayor to understand, and I wish he'd look at me when I'm talking to him to tell him how sincere I am about this. This man brought me into politics, and he's been a mentor for me. I'm about following the law, and he knows that, and we've had many talks about that. And I will tell you, the situation he's in right now, I had a talk with him prior to him, and I actually advised him not to get into that situation. So I will tell you, if this council wanted to push back till November of 24 and correct this ordinance, I would support that. This is not about me trying to remove him. This is about us following the law and not looking for ways out because we like somebody or don't like somebody. So I would support that going to 2024, making it effective this next term. If I can get this, and I'll withdraw this right now. And trust me, I got better things to do than to do these subpoenas and run around here and do all this stuff.
I would support November 2024 implementation. From my discussion with the city attorney, everything that Mr. Rose done is perfectly legitimate according to my discussions with the attorney. I've also had calls from other politicians, let's say, telling me other examples in the local area of just, I think that policy is not a good one for everybody. It's written the way it is, so I think we have to live to it while it's in place. But I think it's not very good on definitions. If we can do a better job of having our attorney write something that defines things in 2020, you know, at the next election, I'm all for it. But I don't think it should affect people that are currently in office under the things that were written at the time that they took it.
Okay. And I think this will solve this going forward.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's not my intent to remove the mayor from his position. That's not the intent. The intent is for us to follow the law, and that's what I want to do. And I'd like us, if we can correct the law, if we can correct this situation, I will withdraw the special meeting. Mr. Rohde, it's time, but but I think it is. So do we have enough head nods to move forward with that? Do you have 4? I don't think so. How many?
I'm in favor. I don't know who else is.
I'm good with that. So then we don't have to have the special meeting, nothing happens, we're staying exactly as.
Mr. Frampus would have to have his say. If he wanted to have a special meeting, I am going to withdraw. I'm the only one that's done subpoenas, and I'm the only one that has the evidence so far. So, I mean, some of the evidence was public record right now, it is, but the rest of it is not. So I'm looking for us to follow the law and set an example to do the right thing.
Mr. Frampus, you're up again.
I really don't understand how everybody here on council has an opinion without even seeing the evidence. I just don't understand, and I'm okay with council voting that the mayor stays. I'm okay with that. Let's do it at a hearing. Let's put the evidence out there, and then if y'all vote, however you vote, that's fine. Go on record and vote, and you know, the only question was, does his current status meet the charter requirements? That's the only question. It's not whether to boot the mayor out or any of this stuff. Does his residency status right now meet the charter requirements? And we're going to have a hearing to discuss that. And I don't understand how y'all can sit up here and not know the facts and make a decision.
I think
it just blows my mind.
I'll let you finish. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Pat.
I think I do know the facts. I may not know let me finish. I'll let you finish. I may not know 100% of the details that you got about water usage or any other thing that you've got, but I've spoken time after time after time to the city attorney, and each time he can correct me if I'm wrong here, has said that everything that the mayor has done is compliant with the law. That's not me talking. That's our city attorney talking. So he has known, as I understand it.
I believe Mr. Bennett.
I'd like to clarify that
he knows the facts.
I'd just like to clarify that according to the charter, the council members are the sole determiner of who meets the criteria for residency.
Yeah, my understanding.
So I have not weighed in on that specific issue, and I want you to understand that.
My understanding is I've
looked
gone
at the
to you and
driver's
asked for
license,
guidance
the
on
lease.
what are the requirements, and you have told me directly, and you can again correct me again, that he meets those requirements. I do realize there is a clause in there that says, in the end, no matter what, it's up to the council. I get that part.
And in the court, yeah.
Right. So I understand what you're saying. I mean, in the end, I agree. It's up to the council to make. We can override it no matter what the evidence says.
So
according to that clause in there, because it says, and in the end, it's up to the council. I get that.
I can bring some clarity for this.
Just so I can clarify, for the public and for the record.
Sure.
I've sent out a memo that laid out the law and have said that you would have to look at the facts as they come out in the hearing and apply it to the law that currently exists, and that is for you all to decide. I've not made a public pronouncement one way or the other whether he meets the residency requirements, because that's your job.
Absolutely.
Some of the evidence that's out there that I got from public records is that you cannot do a partial lease in this community. It's just not allowed.
I understand that part.
If you understand that, then if you're not allowed to do it, everybody up here lives in a homeowners association and knows that they take people to court for residency issues because the leases get signed and aren't supposed to be signed. We all know that. And it has to be a valid lease to be able to meet the requirements. And according to the homeowners association documents, it's not a valid lease. So We need a hearing to discuss this. That's all I'm asking for. If you want to say at the hearing that you think that that's okay, so be it, Pat. Go on record and say that. That's all.
I'm agreeing with the motion that John has put forward, and I didn't think we were here tonight to discuss the specifics of the case. I thought that's something that might or might not occur at a future time. So,
I'll tell you, I've prosecuted many cases over the years. I have a good feeling when I have a case that's viable and has overwhelming evidence. Believe it or not, this one actually does. But the problem with this one is there's some ambiguity. I can never pronounce that word correctly in the way that the charter is written. And I would certainly want to move forward on something where there's a technicality on a definition of the residency issue. And it would be bad. And to put it simply, I don't want this to sound like I'm being judgmental or being too abrasive with the mayor. He has found a loophole. And what I want to do is close that loophole. And we can close that loophole whenever. That's fine. And so it doesn't happen. Now, I would ask the mayor, the homeowners association over there is very upset about this. Is there some other arrangements that you can find so that there's not a multifamily unit? I went over this extensively with them. They're set up for single family only, and you have a multifamily arrangement. So if you could work on something on that, that would be better for the time period, because you're going to save the person that's there a whole lot of trouble, and those people are going to be up in arms, and I really don't want them coming in. So if you could work on that, that would be great. And do we have 4 nods to move forward? And I'll withdraw the hearing. So everybody okay with that?
What you just said, that we won't have, this is when nothing will be in effect until November of '24. We're not going to have a special hearing. Everything is status quo.
And Mayor's going to work on fixing the homeowners association?
You two finish, I'll respond.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
You got your 2. I don't.
I'm good.
We got enough? 4?
You got you. It's up to Dan and Diana. And I don't know if the mayor's voting or not.
This is not a motion. We're just looking for nods.
We're just looking for a consensus from the council to move forward, beginning researching and drafting an ordinance that we will bring to you at some future date that will have a November 2024 effective date, is what I understand from the group.
I'm waiting for you two to finish. Deputy Mayor, what else you have to say, and then I'll respond.
I don't have anything else to say.
I'm sorry?
I don't have anything else to say.
Okay. First of all, I can say that as far as the lease with my landlord, I can show you copies of that and everything else. And as the city attorney, you're more than welcome to speak up, just like you told me, that this is a private matter between the owner of the home that's issued me the lease and the homeowners association.
Yeah, so on its face, it's a valid lease. It's been signed and notarized by both parties. It has the proper terms to establish a lease, and that's what I have advised. I have not looked at the homeowner's documents because I'm not prosecuting this issue. If the homeowner's documents become an issue, I could look at them, but ultimately it would be for a judge to decide after a proper hearing whether the homeowner's documents prohibits the the rental as it stands. So I'm not taking a stand on that one way or the other because I don't have enough information to do so.
But again, that's a private matter between my landlord and HOA. Moving it forward, assuming it says all that, and I've looked, and I've lived in this development over 20 years, and I didn't know that rule, even though there's many families that have more than one, et cetera, et cetera. So I went out and I have another place that I'm out of an HOA with a lease to keep my landlord. He's okay with it, but he likes anyway. Yeah, to make it okay on that level. So, and as soon as I get all the stuff, I will show you, Mr. City Attorney. So, That's where I'm at. Ms. Adams?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't think we were having this discussion tonight. I thought this was the purpose of a special meeting on Monday. But in terms of this ordinance that's being requested by Mr. Ditmore, Mr. City Attorney, would you describe this as a loophole? Is that, I just want to make sure and clear that I'm understanding. He feels like there's a loophole, therefore he would like to close it, and that is the purpose of the ordinance being requested.
I'm not sure if I would use that word. The word residency, as I defined in the memo, isn't clearly defined by statute. Now, we have home rule powers, and I've researched some opinions of the Florida Supreme Court, the Florida Attorney General, and the Division of Elections, and we do have some leeway to define residency in our Code of Ordinances. How much leeway, that'll be further research down the road as I begin to craft this. I haven't put a ton of hours into this because I wasn't sure if you'd even want the ordinance. But, we do have home rule powers to move forward. I'll leave it to you guys to decide whether it's a loophole. I would just say residency is mostly undefined except for in cases where it's been defined by those three entities that I've already mentioned.
So you're going to need additional research to write this ordinance. Do you know how many hours you've been able to spend on this issue versus other city issues since this issue?
One of the advantages of being an in-house attorney is I don't have to keep track of my hours like at a law firm down to the 10th of an hour, and I have not attempted to do so. It's been a significant amount of time, and it will continue to be if I draft an ordinance. But, that's part of, the job and part of why you have an in-house attorney, I guess, because you don't have to pay someone, $300 an hour to do this.
Understood. I just want to make sure the regular functionings that I know keep you plenty busy are not being sucked up with one issue necessarily, that our city is still functioning.
I'm muddling through. I'm in a one attorney office and, doing the best I can.
That's why I'm checking. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Frampus.
Since Mr. Ditmore got 4 hands, he said he was going to cancel his option. I can't be prepared by Monday, so we'll have to reschedule this when I can get the evidence I need. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
So I understand that we have direction to move forward with beginning the process of drafting an ordinance and to cancel the hearing that's coming up forward on Monday.
Yes. Do you need 4 to cancel the hearing, or just need me to?
You called it. You can withdraw it. You can withdraw the request.
As long as we have the 4, right? We have the 4. Everybody's good. 4. Okay.
You have until 2024 to draft your new
Hopefully, it'll be done sooner than that.
And it takes, he asked a question, 4 votes to do anything, so it would take 4 votes to even have this special meeting that we just kind of had and in theory had, so, all right. So, all right, up next, Councilmember Bentley.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We went to the League of Cities conference like, I think, most everybody up here, or at least the majority of us. And I did think, as I think Mr. Frampus said, that the courses were actually better than what I've seen some in the past, so I did appreciate that. One course that was fairly new, I thought, was the Form 6 versus Form 1 class, and I personally thought that was pretty informative. Some of you may know that the City Council, starting in January of next year, is subject to filling out a Form 6, which is a lot more invasive than a Form 1 ever hoped to be. So, I think it was good to get a jump start understanding the data that we're going to have to put out there and the load of information on every single investment that we have, every single stock that we have that's over, I think a $1,000 limit. So, it was good to kind of understand some of the stuff that we need to, or at least I need to start collecting, and others I'm sure do as well for the future. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Up next, Councilmember Young.
Thank you. I also did the Florida League of Cities. I was there on Thursday. I came home Thursday night, and I did not go back. I went to Sprouts on Saturday because I had another meeting on Monday, so I couldn't make that. Do we have the pictures queued up?
QIT.
If you go to Publix and you go down the back street, Doherty, if you haven't been there recently, there's the apartments that are right at the corner of the reserves, right at the corner. It appears that when they have an eviction, this is what they do with the contents of whoever's apartment that they've cleared out. They dump it on the street like this. And this is their status quo. They do this from time to time. The city has to clean this up. The city charges them, well, fines them, it's illegal dumping, and then they charge them to clean this up as well. But I guess our fine and the charge for the cleanup is such that it doesn't matter, because the next time they have an eviction, this is what they do again. And I wanted to let you know that this should not be. I don't know what in the world we can do to prevent this. They have a parking lot. They could have put that in. I know in other times they've done this, and it's just been the bulk items, TV, furniture. But this time it's food, it's containers, it's plastic, and it's in the drainage ditch right there to go down into that. So, of course, I let Mr. Rohde know about it, and our city staff came out and cleaned this all up, and you cannot even tell that it happened now. They did such a great job cleaning this up. They had a little dozer type thing, and the only thing you see now is a little break in the dirt where the tracks upset the dirt a little bit. The rain will wash on that. That'll be fine, and it's like it was never there. But I just wanted to make you aware that this goes on, and it goes on readily. If you go down there now, you'll see some new trash out there, but that's new. Our guys cleaned it up since then.
I actually saw that happen. It was a truck that was just unloading the back, and I thought the truck was broken down, and they were taking stuff out. And it was, I think it was like 3:30 in the afternoon whenever I was going to public shopping. Yeah.
Well, this is awful, just awful that this happens, and I mean, there's illegal dumping in other places, but and for this person to just continuously do this, I don't know what we can do, but I certainly hope we can think of some kind of ordinance that is more than the slap on the wrist, that is obviously not enough to convince this person not to do this. And that's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember McDowell.
Thank you, Mayor. I, as well, attended the Palm Bay and the Melbourne Chamber meetings, and I also attended the West Melbourne Business Advisory, or not advisory, I don't know what the association, along with the assistant manager, city manager, Mr. Bradford. And it was well attended. I would say probably at least about 20 folks there, and I did, on a positive note, I did play the 50-50 and won. And rightfully so, I returned the money to the association where it belonged. So for the record, I did not keep it. But anyway, it was a well attended, and I enjoyed it very much. I was going to mention that the conference, which I also attended, the cybersecurity was interesting, and I'm going to put together some of my notes. I don't know if anybody else attended the cybersecurity session, but I wanted to get that to the city as well. So that's pretty much all I have on my report. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Adams.
Thank you, Mayor. I had on my notes from the last time that we had met, the day after was National Night Out. So I know it's going back to the day after the last meeting, but Chief, that was very well done, very well organized, heard great things from our residents. So it was great. So many of us were able to attend. Beyond that, the Sprouts ribbon cutting, I too am guilty of also spending money while we were there. The sandwiches, they had to get me with trying the sandwiches, so it was good. In terms of yesterday, we had the Space Coast League of Cities, so we presented the scholarship winners for this year, and of the four, each of the four recipients came from different cities that participate in the league, but Chase Riley was our representative that was selected from West Melbourne, so that was very exciting. But I got feedback just in general from representatives in the league that these were some of the most qualified scholarship scholarship recipients that we've had receive in the past few years. So I'm hoping, raising the expectation that, as the program continues forward, we continue to get the program out to residents each year, and just encourage those looking to get in public service that we continue to get those high quality applicants. In terms of the League of Cities Conference, I did not go to cybersecurity. There were grants, and there was public service, and a couple of others, but the ones that stood out to me were actually I took a lot of notes during the general session, and then immediately brought them to Mr. Rohde and said, I have tons of ideas. What do we think about this? Yeah, that's about how I come into those meetings, but I appreciate him listening. But two things that I had wanted to share that really stood out to me in terms of our residents is they did a session from an organization that has an initiative called Growing Bolder. And so it's a way to engage your older residents who, from their research, do not want to be called seniors because there's a stigma attached to senior being not active, just kind of, moving to that next phase of life and not being involved. So they talked a lot about different initiatives that cities are doing to engage different generations in various activities, and they really highlighted having a purpose. They pulled in some great research. I want to go read the research myself rather than summarize it. But a lot of it focused on how do you engage with those residents and then engage them in city purposes, whether it's volunteer work, whether it's programs, those things that when you typically think of senior activities, we have a lot of healthcare-based things or things that are more medically based as you get older instead of necessarily keeping them active or having a purpose. So that was a really, really good one. And then the second general session had focused on artificial intelligence and what that means for cities moving forward. They brought in a lot of technology, specifically ones that are currently being piloted by other cities for things like building department to review plans, create different press releases and things like that. They do say it is not infallible. There are, typically errors of some sort because it's just a matrix of decisions to create these things. So you still need people to be engaged, be reading, be evaluating, things like that. So I don't think it replaces people to a degree, but I think it could address efficiency, at least from the way that he was presenting it. I know it's still got a ways to go. The programs he was talking about won't be rolled out as an option for cities until at the minimum of next year. So I appreciate that they brought these topics in because I think especially for our city they could be relevant. So sharing with you, but I'm sure Mr. Rohde will hear more as I bring more notes. Thank you for your patience, sir.
All right, excellent. Obviously, I went to a lot of the same things. So I was going to talk about National Night Out. That's the first thing I had. It was a good event. A lot of participation from a lot of the same homeowners, so maybe we can, I know you're trying to expand that, and you're bringing something in October to try to get more people together, so there'll be more about that coming out. So not everybody lives in the HOAs, so this will be a good way to get more people out to when you bring that forward. Also went to the Palm Bay Chamber of Commerce, Melbourne Chamber of Commerce, and all the other chambers there. Florida League of Mayors, again, as she talked about, senior citizens is a group that's evolving in a lot of ways. I mean, we're getting more and more senior citizens, and people are living longer. But there's so many things that we can do to help them in the sports field, and they showed a lot of competition. These 85, 95-year-old people swimming and competing, and when they have a purpose to get up in the morning and change clothes, and not just an old smelly, like they said, an old smelly senior citizen kind of thing that just lays around all the time. But if there's things in the community to do to engage these people, they'll come out and they'll live longer and everything else. So it was good. It was upbeat, and there's a lot of research, and I do have a booklet on that. Florida League of Cities also, I mean, they had a lot of different things, but the AI, artificial intelligence, was really, I thought, interesting because it's here. I mean, they can change your voice and have you talk to somebody and convince you that you did this, that, or the other. A lot of crimes happening with AI because of people get convinced it's it looks so real. It's the picture, the sound, just the way they can follow everything you're doing. So I think we need to keep an eye on that. And the city level, as Ms. Adams says, it's a tool. It can check things faster than any of us. It can write stories. They wrote a book in a couple of minutes. It was a really pretty interesting book. You put a couple of facts in there and the life of the city in West Melbourne kind of thing. I mean, it would spit it out like that. It was very interesting. Sprouts, it's living up to its name. Again, they're a farm store. They try to get fresh farm things, especially local if they can. There's not a whole lot around here that's local presently. They have a lot of fresh stuff from Miami. A lot of the specialty foods down there they bring up here. I think they employ like 80 people. This is a little smaller store. It's their new prototype just to get them going. They have one plan for Century Riviera and another one in Vero Beach. So they're really moving along quickly. And when I went to the store, it was on a Monday when we did the ribbon cutting, and it was very, very busy for Monday. They haven't had a chance to breathe. But again, it's good to support our local businesses. Even though it's a big corporation, they still employ local people. So, and that's all I have. Any question for city manager, city attorney?
Just have one comment for the group. We're meeting with our engineering firm tomorrow to lock down the date. I know Councilwoman Young in the Westbrook neighborhood and several other council members and the mayor concerned about the flooding issue, and we got the grant, and our engineering firm ISS that we contracted with to help that situation has been working with the district, and they've come up with their plan that they want to move forward with, and so we'll be reaching out. So my heads up is that we have a meeting, I think in about 2 weeks. We're putting a meeting on the calendar for the Westbrook neighborhood to invite them out to come and see some of the solutions, how they've worked with the district, updated some models, and then come up with some solutions. So we'll be certainly get that data out. We want to get the neighborhood out and be in contact with them. So certainly get that on. We'll get that out to you and get that on your radar if you're interested in attending that meeting.
All right. Thank you. Seeing it's all on our agenda, this meeting is adjourned at 9:04.